These are the latest reports we are hearing. Russian forces have taken control of Kherson, also in the south, and apparently the first major city to fall. If Russia captures more southern cities, Ukrainian forces could be cut off from the sea. Kyiv remains in government control. A large Russian armoured convoy remains some distance away. We know there has been several reports of bombings in Kharkiv, and we can cross there now live on LBC News to speak to a local who lives there. Siva Kevlich, can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Yeah, hello, I can hear you, still can.
I know you're there with your family. Tell us exactly what it has been like the last 8 days.
As for the last 8 days, it was, of course, it was the first day of invasion when we were shocked, because nobody expected that the big country with the more or less people we know can attack with the missiles the people who slept. It's unbelievable.
Ridiculously uncomfortable.
Then we spent one day in the metro, and then my friend, he invited me to his office to spend the rest of the day in the bunker. It's quite a safe bunker, but in any case, I'm happy, but a lot of people here, they could not be happy because they still spend their nights in the metro, and I can feel this. What is next? Russia tried to occupy the city with the tanks and with the land armies and army forces, but they failed. It's a lot of technique of Russian military technique around the city, which is a scrap metal, and a lot of warriors were killed. They decided they will be met by the flowers, but they were met by the fire.
And is this the Ukrainian military who have been in direct combat with the Russian military? Because we've heard about how men aged 18 to 60 have been told if they can fight to fight. Are you seeing evidence of that?
It's, they supposed the war of last century, and the war of last century, Ukrainians kicked them off, and it was quite obvious reply that nobody wait for you. And of course, the Mr. I don't want to say him Mr. He is insect Putin. He decided that he could kill us with the bombs and with aviation. And of course, the aviation is his big advance, because Ukraine never expected the war against Russia.
And as you know,
military country.
As you know, at the moment, there have been certainly calls from some people saying that they need to have a no-fly zone above Ukraine, but Western leaders, including Boris Johnson, are saying that is not possible because they are within NATO and the rules of engagement there. They do not want to have a direct war fighting with Russia. What does it mean to you, knowing that, of course, there is that the no-fly zone is not in place?
For me, Russia today is the Cartoon Network. It's they're living in their own in their own world. It was created by their propaganda. That here in Ukraine somebody wants to kill them, and we have a lot of NATO bases in Ukraine. However, we do not have anyone NATO bases, and NATO for them it's like the enemy. By this source, the Russian power explain the people why do they live in the poor situation. NATO is the enemy. We have to live in such kind of shit, but we have to resist.
Siva, you're with
Russia from inside.
Siva, you're with your family. You must be worried for your children's safety. Are you going to stay, or are you going to try and leave?
Have you left enough room?
Well, of course, I have four kids. Their
the
age
truck driver who doesn't know what his truck
10,
is.
12 and 13. Of course, when you're living in the bunker for 1 week, it's not the way of life. So they're on the limit, and I decided to leave Kharkiv tomorrow. I have a lot of friends in the world. I have a lot of friends in Ukraine. For sure, they will accept our family, and they welcomed our family to live in their buildings. And so I tried to move tomorrow morning. But to say the truth, I will pray for Kharkiv. I will pray for these people who resist and who stay here.
What about the hospitals where you live? What is happening there? What is the picture? Do you know?
Well, the picture, yeah. I like to travel through Ukraine. Ukraine is a nice country. I think that when the war is finished, I invite everybody to understand this place of freedom. This is a place where when you can feel yourself like a bird. So I know the roads. I will go to the middle of Ukraine, to Kropivnitsky first. Then I have friends in Lviv, and we'll stay there for some time.
Do you feel like you have got the support? Do your friends and neighbours feel that they have the support?
You know that left lane's for turning left, right? You fucking bell end.
Of course. To say the truth, I'm proud of my nation first. I'm proud that we confirm the world that Ukrainians are different than Soviets. Because everybody in the world accepts us like a post-Soviet country. And nobody believes that we changed. Now we confirm everybody that we changed a lot. And we have our own spirit, we have our own culture, we have our own will to realize the fastest reforms in our country and to break with the Soviets.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending time with us on LBC News this afternoon, live in Kharkiv during this battle all around you. Extraordinary, difficult time, and I hope you and your family stay safe.
This is LBC News.
President Putin of Russia has unleashed war in our European continent.
Fundamentally, what underpins this housing crisis is a lack of genuinely affordable, secure social housing.
Where the news never stops.
There's still a large police cordon in place covering a number of streets.
We really call upon our government to have a strategy for children. What does good childhood look like in the 21st century?
Listen on Global Player, LBC News.
Well, we opened the top of the hour talking to the Disasters Emergency Committee Appeals CEO off the back of the humanitarian crisis unfolding, with 1 million people thought to have left Ukraine right now. We're going to come to that just a second, because I'm just hearing the Embassy of Ukraine to the UK has just posted on social media, due to constant cyber attacks towards the Ukrainian embassy to the UK, our official website and emails currently do not work, and they've given other email addresses. That's from the official Embassy of Ukraine to the UK Twitter post. So cyber attacks are certainly of one very grave concern during this conflict, and that appears to be one that is springing up there. Let's go live to Brussels next on LBC News and speak to LBC's correspondent who joins me live, Rosie Birchard. Good to have you on the programme. We're talking about the refugee crisis that is unfolding. What is happening? What has the response been from the EU?
Well, you heard that figure today, that startling figure from the United Nations, that now 1 million people in just 1 week have fled Ukraine into neighbouring countries, many of them into European Union countries. Let's remember that there are 4 EU countries which border Ukraine. The large majority have gone to Poland. EU Home Affairs ministers are currently in talks not far from me on how best to accommodate these refugees. They are expected to give their green light to relax some kind of visa and asylum rules to essentially give these Ukrainian refugees residence permits and easier access to education, easier access to the labour market. Ukrainians do have visa-free access to the EU for 90 days at a time, but they're very much looking at what should happen on day 91. Then, of course, in the kind of acute humanitarian perspective, we understand they'll be discussing extra funds to go to those frontline countries. And the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is indeed making a tour of some of those countries today and tomorrow to try and express the EU's support to them as they accommodate many people. And we've seen plenty of Poles, for example, heading towards that border with supplies, with food, with sanitary supplies. to try and make these Ukrainians feel welcome. We've also had some rather worrying allegations of discrimination when it comes to Africans and Asians trying to leave Ukraine. So that's something that we know the European Union and indeed the United Nations has also been paying close attention to.
What about in terms of sanctions? Is there unification across the EU member states when it comes to carrying out and imposing sanctions?
Well, it must be, I think I have to say, there's been a lot of criticism in the EU in the past that it's very divided on foreign policy, that it's slow to adopt sanctions because you need to get the agreement among 27 different member states. But at least what analysts are saying is that this time round they seem pretty much more united than ever before. They're more united also with the United Kingdom and with the United States. However, we always have some member states that push for a harsher line on relations with Russia. That's been the case for a long time with, for example, the Baltics. We've heard Lithuania really, having their rallying cry for years now to cut off Nord Stream 2. That's that controversial gas pipeline between Russia and Germany, now cancelled. And they're pushing for, greater sanctions still. The loudest voice there is Ukraine, not an EU member, but Ukraine is asking for a total embargo on Russian oil and gas. That's a measure that EU states have not yet taken, but it's something they may be mulling behind closed doors as they try and perhaps keep something up their sleeve in case the situation deteriorates even further. We're now a week into this conflict, and of course the human impact is huge, and the EU is just really scrambling to try and keep up with these developments.
Well, thank you very much indeed for painting a picture of what is happening where you are in Brussels for us live. Our correspondent Rosie Burchard there.
The news in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes. This is LBC News.
I want to continue our coverage of the refugees, the million people that have fled Ukraine. Many are heading to Poland. We're going to be catching up with a freelance journalist who is on the Poland-Ukraine border, where the refugees are crossing. Hopefully that will be happening in the next 5 minutes or so. Back in London, a lot of people just getting fed up about how they travel around town, and the London Underground is completely suspended most of the lines because of a second strike here that has happened this week, well on Tuesday, one today. LBC reporter Charlotte Lynch has been speaking to commuters at London's Waterloo.
It's all over the place. You have to get a cab, you can't get a cab, or it's very pricey. All the tools, usually with the strikes, there is still a service, some kind of service. Right now it's nothing, so it takes you triple that amount of time to get home.
How long is it added onto your journey?
2.5 hours.
I had to get an Uber from King's Cross to Clapham on Tuesday, and it was like £60.
Gosh.
Yeah. So it's
you're
really
forced to do that, obviously, because you can't get a tube.
same.
And then you did that, from a safety point of view.
Well, yeah, and there was really no kind of other really way instead of getting 3 different buses and you kind of just want to get home.
Well, of course you do want to get home if you've got to work, and best of luck in terms of travelling around the network. If you are late, Number 10 is urging both sides of the tube strike to get on the table and resolve the latest problems. I'm Jim Diamond. There's plenty more online for you anytime at lbc.co.uk. It's Thursday afternoon. We are live across the UK right now, 2:36.
LBC News. Weather.
Dull and overcast for north and western parts of the UK. Brighter in Northern Ireland with some bright spells spreading east. Windy in the north of Scotland, a high of 12 degrees. Rain pushing into Scotland and the north tonight. Heavy at times. Drier for Northern Ireland, Wales and the West Country. Clear skies. A low of -1 in Northern Ireland, but milder elsewhere. Further rain tomorrow for Scotland and the north of England. Brighter in the west. Few isolated showers. Overcast elsewhere.
LBC News.
Magistrates are volunteers who make a real difference in their community, and it's a role you could be perfect for.
People would assume you need a legal background or specific qualifications to become a magistrate, but you don't. Magistrates come from all walks of life. You'll get all the training you need and be supported by a legal advisor. You just have to have the right personal qualities, like being open-minded and fair.
If you're interested in volunteering as a magistrate or want to find out more, visit icanbeamagistrate.co.uk.
13 million people around the world are just like me.
I value knowing that my investments are all in order.
I value having low fees
So I can keep up with my returns. And I value that my investment firm has its clients'
best interests at heart.
Join the 30 million investors
giving you Nectar points, we're giving you your own Nectar prices too. Yep, tailored discounts on hand-picked products we think you'll like when you shop in store with Smart Shop. And the more you shop, the more tailored your discounted products become. Fancy? So what are you waiting for? Check your Nectar app to learn more about your prices. Smart Shop and digital Nectar registration required. Items subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Visit nectar.com/mynectar prices for more info.
Hold on to your mugs. EE's Full Fiber is here. New broadband that can handle anything. And whatever you think that means, times it by a zillion and dip it in chocolate. Because this broadband connects 100 devices in your home. Search EE Full Fiber.
18.3% UK availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk.
Save on that big bathroom refit with this TradePoint member exclusive offer. With 10% off all bathrooms when you spend £250 on a bathroom. Plus, if you loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. Find us at B&Q or at tradepoint.co.uk. Excludes installation services. It's 24th of March. Subject to availability. See tradepoint.co.uk. Everyone can make little changes to waste less. And at McDonald's, we're no different.
Like reusing our old cooking oil to make biodiesel.
That helps fuel my truck. Or recycling my used McCafe cup at McDonald's.
To make a birthday card for me. Thanks, Dad.
It's the start of a plan to recycle and reuse even more. Because we know when you change a little, you change a lot. Recycling units available in UK restaurants. Search National Cup Recycling Scheme. Includes cards and other products.
We don't do slapdash. We don't do sloppy. We don't do bodge jobs. And we never do that'll do. We do a job properly. We're Trust a Trader, and we're proud of all our members and the great work they do in homes like yours. So when you need something doing, from locksmiths to landscaping, just type it into trustatrader.com and you'll get reputable, reviewed tradespeople in your area. Because you can always trust a trader.
Trustatrader.com.
My prostate cancer was thankfully caught in the nick of time, but it shouldn't be down to luck.
Men at higher risk are
Aged over 50.
Those with a family history of the disease. Or black men over 45.
Check your risk of prostate cancer now. Search Risk Checker or visit prostatecanceruk.org. Men, we are with you.
News, sport, travel, weather in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global Newsroom, it's 2:40. Good afternoon, I'm Jim Diamond. Peace talks between Ukraine and Russia are resuming in Belarus as the war enters its second week. Heavy shelling is continuing in several key Ukrainian cities, with Moscow claiming its first takeover. Authorities say forces have completely captured the regional state administration building in Kherson. It is feared hundreds could be dead in the port of Mariupol, which has been under attack for more than 36 hours. Russian troops are said to be cutting off electricity, heat and water, and blocking food supplies. The UN claims more than 1 million people have fled to Ukraine, the equivalent to 2% of its total population.
LBC News. Travel.
On the Underground, the Bakerloo line can run between Queen's Park and Elephant and Castle, but a lot of those stations between those two stations are closed. And the Central District, Piccadilly and Northern lines, although they're running a very limited service. Now on the roads, the M56 westbound very slow in Greater Manchester to Junction 6. That's the Hale Four Seasons roundabout, and that's all down to an accident. In Northamptonshire, the A14, there are delays westbound to Junction 14 at Titchmarsh, and that's because of an accident and only one lane is open. In London at Finsbury Park, the Seven Sisters Road stays closed southbound because of an ongoing investigation. I'm Joanne Webb. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
Good afternoon to you. I'm Jim Diamond here, live across the UK on LBC News. The humanitarian crisis is ensuing, as we have been hearing, with 1 million people leaving Ukraine. We know that is because of the grave concern for people's safety. Delegates from Russia and Ukraine are meeting for peace talks in Belarus after the first week of conflict. It's entering week 2. Moscow claims it's taken its first city, with reports of administration buildings being captured in Kherson. The mayor has appealed to troops not to shoot at civilians, while asking residents not to provoke them. Alexander Gonshaw, who's there, says he'll protest against the presence of Russian soldiers.
I'm not going to live under Russian occupation forever. My family is in very poor situation because my dad is very sick. He has a cancer 4th stage and he is dying, but he wants to die as Ukrainian.
Well, authorities in Ukraine claim 9 people have been killed following an airstrike on 2 schools and houses in Chernihiv. Kristina Yerwanowski is a freelance journalist who is right now on the Poland-Ukraine border where refugees are crossing. Let's hopefully speak to her right away. Kristina, thank you very much for your time. Are you surrounded by people at that border?
Well, there's certainly hundreds at least refugees here. We're at the train station that's closest to the border. This is where a lot of people head to go to either other parts of Poland or other countries. Some have told me they're going to Germany. Other people have told me that people have gone on to Austria or even Amsterdam. Many people don't really know where they're going to yet, but they're getting a lot of good guidance. There's also a lot of support. People are getting free SIM cards, for example. There's people working at the train station who are able to speak a lot of different languages, because it's not just Ukrainians here. There is sometimes also other foreigners, foreign students who have been studying in Ukraine who are now leaving. So overall, the situation is relatively organized. There's a lot of confused people, so a certain level of chaos.
But clearly, Poland are welcoming the Ukrainian people that are fleeing this war with open arms. Would you say that's fair?
For the most part, yes. Poland has about 1 million Ukrainians already just living here. Numbers right now are over 500,000 in terms of refugees who have entered this country. From what I can tell, I haven't seen any issues. People have been really helpful towards each other and happy to offer that help and keen to offer it. I think that there's just a certain level of recognition that these people are really, really similar to them. And of course, Polish people themselves feel a certain level of fear that they too could at some point face attacks from Russia as well.
The Ukrainian men who are aged between 18 and 60 were told to stay and fight. Are you seeing men in these groups of refugees?
Not many. So I've seen men who are probably not Ukrainian. People who, again, like foreign students perhaps, or just people who are foreigners who aren't Ukrainian. But yes, the vast majority are women and younger children. I've seen a few men here and there with families, and I have heard from people who made the crossing that there have been a few men, again, with families, not single men. But for the most part, it's women and children.
You must have heard some extraordinary first-hand stories from people that have fled, and they must have told you about in what form of transport. We've seen images of whatever train services were running in the last couple of days, completely full to the brim.
Yes, so I was speaking to a couple of young women from Ghana, actually. They were medical students in Kharkiv, which has been badly hit by the attacks. They went first on a train from Kharkiv to Lviv and then came to Poland, and they talked to me about a high level of discrimination that they were facing, which many other people have talked about. People who are not white, the ways that they were dealing with authorities in Ukraine. They had a hard time getting on the train. There was hundreds of people on the train, and these young women were telling me that they were only one of 8 black people on the train, or 8 people who were not white, at least, on the train. That there was a man who was not Ukrainian. I believe they said he was black, and he was with his family, and he didn't have to stay because he wasn't a Ukrainian, so he wasn't being called to service for the Ukrainian military, and that he had to really fight, they said, to get on that train.
Do people need any sort of medical help? What about medicine and access to things like that, which people need in their day-to-day lives? If you just pack your stuff up, you're leaving in a hurry. This is less than 7 days ago, people were living in relative peace and harmony, a normal life, and then suddenly their whole world is just flipped in seconds, days.
I haven't on the border heard of many issues. I mean, we are in an EU country and they do not stay on the border for very long. I would guess about maybe a few hours. They get on a train, then they go to another city, a larger city. So I spent a couple of years in Ukraine from the revolution to Crimea and spent a lot of time in East Ukraine. Access to medicine, it will be a huge issue in Ukraine, and we've heard this from humanitarian organizations because there's so many people who are left behind, especially who are elderly. Either they don't want to leave their homes or they cannot leave. And so many people, many elderly people have these chronic conditions like blood pressure where they need medicine in order to survive. If they don't get their medicine, they can get a heart attack and obviously die. There's a lot of these types of conditions in Ukraine that they've been dealing with for 8 years, specifically in East Ukraine, with issues of not getting that medicine. So this will, I mean, now that it's a whole country, it's going to be definitely a major issue.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us live from the Poland-Ukraine border. That is the journalist, Christina Szymański. Now, it is 2:48. Just hearing some breaking news from police in North London. A teenager has been arrested by the counter-terror officers. The Met Police say a 19-year-old held today as part of an investigation led by the force's counter-terror command, detained under Section 41 of the Terrorism Act 2000 and remains in custody at a London police station. There is not believed to be any immediate threat to the public. Very keen they are to stress that right now, the Metropolitan Police. We know on the first anniversary of Sarah Everard's murder, her family say they miss her all the time. They say they've been overwhelmed by the public's support on this. Now let's get an update from Rachel Venables, our correspondent, who's been covering this case since the start.
On the evening of the 3rd of March last year, Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old woman, went missing as she walked home through Clapham from a friend's house.
We continue to search the area. Anyone around the area where she disappeared from may notice a lot of police activity, and we continue our searches.
Her face was all over the news and social media as people organised searches, lit candles and prayed. But a week on, her body was found in Woodland in Kent. The man arrested on suspicion of her murder, a serving police officer, Wayne Cousins, who was questioned over her disappearance.
Do you know where Sarah is? No. Do you know anything about what happened to her? I know that she went missing up in London somewhere.
A vigil in her memory was planned by the bandstand at Clapham Common, but police said it broke COVID rules, and there were shocking scenes of clashes between police and protesters like Patsy Stevenson.
It's a shame, you know. I didn't expect to be thrown to the ground and handcuffed, but you know, it's what happened.
But despite the outrage, the Commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, refused to apologise for the way the event was policed.
My officers in a very difficult position, as they have been again and again in the last year, policing within the coronavirus restrictions, having to uphold the law.
A few months later, Wayne Cousins pleaded guilty, and in September at the Old Bailey, he was given a whole life sentence for Sarah Everard's kidnap, rape and murder.
In the last few minutes, the prosecutor has revealed that Wayne Cousins handcuffed and arrested Sarah Everard before putting her into the back of his car.
Sarah's kidnap, rape and murder was one of the most dreadful events in the 190-year history of the Metropolitan Police Service. As the judge said, he has eroded the confidence that the public are entitled to have in the police.
But that confidence in the Met Police continued to be chipped away, from outrage at one senior officer seeming to suggest women in trouble flag down bosses for help, to allegations against other serving officers, claims of institutional misogyny. Then last month, Dame Cressida Dick resigned the top job. In the meantime, violence against women and girls has become part of the national conversation. Jamie Klingler's co-founder of Reclaim These Streets.
This starts and ends with men doing this.
Like, it's not about us carrying rape alarms. It's not about us taking self-defense classes. It is about the men perpetrating these crimes against women.
It's also become a political and policing priority. Jane Connors is Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Met.
Where we're actually getting out into our communities, particularly with women and girls, to understand how they feel and listen to what they want us to do, because the change will need to start with us.
But on this anniversary, many find themselves asking what materially has changed, with women certainly no safer than they were 12 months ago when Sarah Everard first went missing.
That report there from our correspondent, Rachel Venables.
The news in 20 minutes, every 20 minutes. This is LBC News.
If you're in London, and if you're not in London, you will be less interested in this information I'm about to impart with you. You're seeing an awful lot of people on foot today, walking around. It is very best form of exercise, they say, is walking. Well, very handy if you normally take the tube. You can't. 11 lines closed, pretty much. Huge walkout. Happened on Tuesday. Happening again today. As the RMT are very worried about their jobs and the changes that are in place because of the pandemic and the ticket-based revenue that TfL operates under Transport for London. They're basically, the government's having to give a check every couple of weeks to keep the services running. Numbers are still down pre-pandemic on about 60% of where they were before. So it's over to the bus drivers today, the train drivers, and the taxi drivers as well, who are picking up the slack for those that have to work from work, because not everybody can work from home. Some people actually have to also work from work. Would you believe it? It's Thursday, March the 3rd. I'm Jim Diamond. Coming up, we'll get more on that tube strike. We'll be live to London Waterloo, where they've got trains running in and out, but you can't get the tube. When you're on the other side, we'll speak with a bit of luck to Charlotte Lynch on that. We'll get more on the charity shelter box is responding to the Ukraine crisis and sending a team to Eastern Europe. In fact, here's the promise I'll give to you. We'll bring you the very latest lines on the conflict on day 8 after this.
LBC News. Weather.
Dull and overcast for north and western parts of the UK. Brighter in Northern Ireland with some bright spells spreading east. Windy in the north of Scotland, a high of 12 degrees. Rain pushing into Scotland and the north tonight. Heavy at times. Drier for Northern Ireland, Wales and the West Country. Clear skies. A low of -1 in Northern Ireland, but milder elsewhere. Further rain tomorrow for Scotland and the north of England. Brighter in the west. Few isolated showers. Overcast elsewhere.
LBC News.
And then they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Night, Dad.
ISBN number 0130-998634. Cover photograph by...
Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy our delicious 99p cheeseburger. Bars of the McDonald's Saver menu. From 11 a.m, price and participation may vary. 30 million people around the world are just like me.
And me.
And me.
And me.
And me.
And me. And me.
I value knowing that my investment firm has been recommended by which?
Not once.
Not twice.
But 3 years in a row.
Join the 30 million investors around the world who value getting Vanguard value.
Couldn't have said it
better myself. Vanguard. Value to investors. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Save on that big bathroom refit with this TradePoint member exclusive offer. With 10% off all bathrooms when you spend £250 on a bathroom. Plus, if you loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. Find us at B&Q or at tradepoint.co.uk. Excludes installation services as 24th of March. Subject to availability, see tradepoint.co.uk.
The Wi-Fi's down.
This is broadband rage. It happens when your internet drops out and the red mist descends. Why suffer like this? Get the UK's first unbreakable Wi-Fi. Only BT's new hybrid home broadband is backed up by EE's mobile network. One day all broadband will be like this.
4G coverage required. 4G connection takes up to 175 seconds. Verify bt.com/verifyhybrid.
Today's $1.99 wrap of the day is the barbecue bacon and chicken one. Guaranteed to cause flavour envy. Picture a soft tortilla wrap filled with
crispy chicken.
Lush, smoky barbecue sauce. Delicious bacon too, yes please. Today's $1.99 barbecue bacon and chicken one. So big on flavour, everyone will want some. Only at McDonald's. From 11 a.m.
Driving is not a game. if you tailgate the car in front. The closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Leave at least a 2-second gap. Search National Highways for more information.
You, waiting to get your first home. It's long, but with a Barclays family springboard mortgage and some help from the family, you can make your moneyverse work for you. That dream home, it's yours. Hosting your nearest and dearest, take their deposit returned with interest, double tick. Unlock your dream home with the Barclays family springboard mortgage. Make money work for you, Barclays. Home may be repossessed if payments missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply. Oh, traffic. We're going to be so late. Oh, we're going to miss the vows. Everyone will see us sneak in. So embarrassing. We'll have to get changed in a lay-by. Oh, look. McDonald's. See, they're doing a chicken Big Mac. Probably best to just blend into the crowd after. It's not like we're family.
Welcome back, the Chicken Big Mac. But hurry, it's only here till 15th of March. Served after 11 a.m. Subject to availability at participating restaurants until the 15th of March.
LBC News. The latest news headlines. Next.
There's nothing quite like that doorbell moment when your McDelivery arrives. Or snaffling fries on the way back to the living room. There's nothing quite like the taste of a Big Mac in your own home. And there's nothing quite like the kids enjoying a Happy Meal in perfect peace. For a minute, anyway. There's nothing quite like a McDelivery. Order now on the My McDonald's app or via Uber Eats and Just Eat. Participating restaurants only. Serving times and delivery fees apply. Service charge may apply. See the My McDonald's app, Uber Eats or Just Eat for full details.
This is LBC News.
If they actually do what they're capable of doing, it is going to be a disaster for Russia.
To those in the outside world looking in, Downing Street appears to be party central.
Where the news never stops.
We also have to make sure our societies and our governments listen to young people and, crucially, include young people.
No one can leave. The borders are completely closed. Frightening, actually. Very frightening.
Listen on Global Player, LBC News.
It's Thursday, March the 3rd. You're listening to Jim Diamond here live across the UK. Let's do some headlines for 3.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC News.
Where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom, it's 3 o'clock. I'm Jim Diamond. The governor of Ukraine's northeastern Shivny region confirmed 9 people have died after a Russian airstrike hit 2 schools and houses. Despite the heavy shelling, it remains under Ukrainian control, as does the capital Kyiv and the major cities of Mariupol and Kharkiv. But after a week of shelling and bombardment, Siva Kevlich has told this program he's taking his family to safety.
I try to move tomorrow morning, but to say the truth, I will pray for Kharkiv. I will pray for these people who resist and who stay here.
The US claims more than 1 million people have fled Ukraine, the equivalent to 2% of its total population. Residents are continuing to pack into trains with only as much as they can carry by hand. This is breaking news. Ukraine President Zelensky's office says a second round of talks with the Russians has begun over war in his country. We will monitor, of course, that. And back here, the Queen's carried out another 2 virtual audiences as she continues to recover from coronavirus. Her Majesty spoke to 2 diplomats via video link from Windsor Castle earlier today.
LBC News. Weather.
Dull and overcast for north and western parts of the UK. Brighter in Northern Ireland. Bright spells could spread east. I'm Adam Barber with a full forecast in 15 minutes.
LBC News. Travel.
There are problems on the Underground because of the ongoing strike. The Bakerloo Central District, Piccadilly and Northern Line are running a very limited service. Not across the entire line, though, mainly at the end of the lines. So do allow yourself extra time. All the other lines are suspended. The buses are very busy and the roads are very busy, especially through central London. On the roads in Hertfordshire, the A1M, the exit slip roads in both directions are closed at junction 7. That's the exit for the A602 at Stevenage South. It's following a serious accident just off the motorway. And in Oxfordshire, 1 lane's closed on the M40 northbound at junction 11 at Banbury because of an investigation. I'm Joanne Webb. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
Just gone 3 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Diamond with you here live across the UK on DAB Digital Radio. Your smart speaker, just speak to your smart speaker. You can download the Global Player anytime, and it's free. And you can listen online at lbc.co.uk. But it's probably no doubt, knowing how busy you are as you do your business on Thursday, March the 3rd, you'll be out and about, so probably you will be listening on your devices, which you are welcome to do so. Let's run through what we know so far. Mariupol, a city of 400,000 people, has lost power and water after intense shelling by Russian forces. We have been hearing more details as they unfold on day 8 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We know that the Russian forces claim to have taken control of Kherson in the south, maybe the first major city to fall. If Russia captures more southern cities, Ukrainian forces could be cut off from the sea. Kyiv remains in government control, and a large number of Russian armored convoy are some distances away. The breaking news that happened on the screen flashing in front of me in red, Ukraine's President Zelensky's office is saying the second round of talks with the Russians is underway over the war in his country to try and see if they can stop it happening. First off, the international effort continues to express its anger and dismay at Putin's plan. Canada's just announced a 35% tariff on any imports from Russia or Belarus. The Deputy Prime Minister there says Canada is removing those countries' most favoured nation status as a trading partner, which is normally extended to fellow World Trade Organization member countries. Russia and Belarus join North Korea in being downgraded for trade. Marks & Spencer's announced suspending its shipments to its Russian business run by the retailer's Turkish franchise holder as well. The bombardments and shelling continue. The picture, very, very difficult to ascertain. We get information from, of course, people on the ground who are in the zone of the war conflict itself. I spoke to a civilian, a family man, a little bit earlier, Siva Kevlich, who is in Kharkiv right now. It's been heavily bombarded, and he's told this program how he's coped, how his life has changed in just a week.
I have four kids. Their age is 8, 10, 12, and 13. Of course, when you are living in the bunker for 1 week, it's not the way of life. So they are on the limit, and I decided to leave Kharkiv tomorrow. I have a lot of friends in the world. I have a lot of friends in Ukraine for sure. They will accept our family, and they welcomed our family to live in their buildings. And so I tried to move tomorrow morning. But to say the truth, I will pray for Kharkiv. I will pray for these people who resist and who stay here.
What about the hospitals where you live? What is happening there? What is the picture? Do you know?
Well, the picture, yeah. I like to travel through Ukraine. Ukraine is a nice country. I think that when the war is finished, I invite everybody to understand this place of freedom. This is a place where when you can feel yourself like a bird. So I know the roads. I will go to the middle of Ukraine, to the Kropivnitsky first. Then I have friends in Lviv, and we'll stay there for some time.
Do you feel like you have got the support? Do your friends and neighbours feel like they have the support of the rest of the world? Are they doing enough?
Of course. To say the truth, I'm proud of my nation first. I'm proud that we confirm the world that Ukrainians are different than Soviets. Because everybody in the world accepts us like a post-Soviet country. And nobody believes that we changed. Now we confirm everybody that we changed a lot. And we have our own spirit, we have our own culture, we have our own will to realize the fastest reforms in our country and to break with the Soviets.
We wish him and his family well as they make that escape, as they leave their homeland. Now, we know that the Foreign Secretary's just done an interview. is in Lithuania. Liz Truss right now for talks with the Estonian, Latvian and Lithuanian counterparts in response to the invasion. Shall we listen to what Liz Truss has been saying?
The woman who's tense putting pay scales above her competence.
Yeah, I'll do. The reason I'm here in Vilnius today is to show our strong support for our Baltic allies, the fact that we absolutely stand by our Article 5 commitments, and we are strengthening our presence on the eastern flank. We've doubled our number of troops in Estonia. We're providing military intelligence support here in Lithuania. And of course, tomorrow we've got the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting, and we'll be discussing what more we need to do to strengthen NATO at this very difficult time for European security.
This declaration is this major improvement in the intelligence.
Well, we've already demonstrated that by increasing our deployment into this region, as have our allies like the United States. And what we're talking about at NATO tomorrow is how we continue to strengthen our forces here, as well as update NATO for the new security threats we face. We are absolutely determined to sanction Russian oligarchs. We've already sanctioned over 100 individuals and organisations. We've got a further list we are working through. We've put in place the toughest package of sanctions in British history on Russia, including bank freezes, including freezes on the central bank, including export controls, and we will do more.
Why particularly the sanctions so few Russian oligarchs compared to the billion?
Well, we have sanctioned Russian oligarchs and Russian organisations. We've also gone further than many others in banning vessels, Russian vessels from our ports, in closing airspace to Russian aeroplanes, and we will continue to sanction oligarchs as we build the evidence case to do so.
And can you tell us more about the laws which is thought to prevent legal sanctions?
Well, we need to make sure we have the right evidence to put in place those sanctions. As I've said, we've already sanctioned a number of Russian oligarchs and a number of organisations. We've frozen the assets of a number of banks, and we can see the impact these sanctions that are coordinated with our allies are having in Russia. They're accused of the banks. We've seen a fall in the ruble. We've seen a rise in interest rates.
Yeah, it's the normal people who don't want the war that you're shitting on,
G7 foreign ministers,
idiot.
and we will be talking about what more sanctions we will put in place.
If I can repeat your question, can you tell us more about the laws which sought to prevent sanctions of Russian oligarchs?
I'm very clear that legal threats will have no impact on our ability to sanction oligarchs, and we will continue to work through our list. We will continue to sanction oligarchs, and there is nowhere for any of Putin's cronies to hide.
Well, that's the latest from Liz Truss, who is in Lithuania there. That was a pulled interview, slightly off mic, but we've got the gist of what the foreign state wanted to say.
This is LBC News.
President Putin of Russia has unleashed war in our European continent.
Fundamentally, what underpins this housing crisis is a lack of genuinely affordable, secure social housing.
Where the news never stops.
There's still a large police cordon in place covering a number of streets.
We really call upon our government to have a strategy for children. What does good childhood look like in the 21st century?
Listen on Global Player, LBC News.
Well, let's run through some facts. It opened in 1863. It has 451 escalators, and the deepest lift shaft, is 55.2 metres at Hampstead. What am I talking about? Well, it's not a very good quiz, is it? It's the Tube, the London Underground. There are 11 lines, but hardly any are indeed operating today because there is a strike. Second one this week. Let's go live to Waterloo. LBC reporter Charlotte Lynch is amongst the trains. I can hear a train moving in the background. They can run, the Tubes can't.
That's it, and that's what everybody is trying to do, pile onto these trains, because they simply can't use the methods of transport that they usually would on the Underground. I can see just over the road the The big metal gates to Waterloo Underground are chained shut and people are pouring in and out of the main station. They've been phoning family and friends, telling them they're going to be late. I can see people frantically checking their phones, working out the best way to get where they need to be and asking people for help as these chaotic tube strikes continue. There are next to no tubes running and most tube stations are completely closed. These people have told me it has been a nightmare for them.
It's all over the place. You have to get a cab, you can't get a cab, or it's very pricey. I mean, all the tubes, usually with the strikes, there is still service, some kind of service. But now it's nothing, so it takes you triple that amount of time to get home.
I'm getting a train. Again, this is the first time I've been into London for a while. Tube strikes are pain.
How long has it added on to your journey?
I took about an hour and a half.
It's a shame if you can't afford Ubers and stuff. I mean, I had to get an Uber from King's Cross to Clapham on Tuesday and it was like £60.
And you did that, you know, from a safety point of view?
Well, yeah, and it was really like no kind of other really like way, instead of getting like 3 different buses and just you kind of just want to get home.
Well, this almost feels a bit like the calm before the storm, as we've not even hit the evening rush hour yet this morning. And on Tuesday, we saw scenes of absolutely huge queues for buses too packed that they just drive past anyway and leave those queues of people behind them. Packed trains as well, really busy platforms. Can I expect more of that tonight? And again, it's expected to continue into tomorrow morning because these things don't just go straight back to normal the next day, because all the tubes aren't in the depots that they're supposed to be in, where they're supposed to start their day. So it's something that's going to take a little while to sort out. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan said that people should work from home today if they can, but of course lots of people have gone back to work after COVID. Their managers expect them in the offices. It's still really busy here in central London, and Sadiq Khan insists the members of the RMT union that they're striking in a row over government funding cuts. They fear it'll hit their pensions. He says he's invited them for negotiations and they've refused to get round the table. So he was urging them to do that yesterday, but instead what we're seeing now is a second day of the underground being practically out of service altogether, and we're expecting a really busy rush hour this evening, again with packed buses and packed trains.
Charlotte Lynch, you're at Waterloo Station. Make sure you can get home yourself as well.
Of course, yeah, I'm worried about that now. I'm going to try and do it now, but yeah, it's affecting everybody in London, isn't it? There's no getting away from it.
I think we should pitch in for a taxi for Charlotte Lynch. What do you reckon about that? I'll tell you something, there'll be extra busy in the black cabs today around London. A lot of people will be using their good old legs. I tried that today, going for a little bit of a walk, very nice indeed from King's Cross. Others, there's the bikes, the Boris bikes are out there. The bus drivers, they really are taking a big hit today when it comes to passenger numbers. It's going to be very busy. Stay with us. We have travel updates pretty much around the clock.
The news in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes. This is LBC News.
Right, good afternoon to you. We're going to be going live to Scotland in the next 6 minutes because controversial legislation which aims to make it easier for transgender people to be legally recognised as their preferred gender is published. We know that LBC's Phil McDonald has been looking at the documents and is going to bring us a story in around about 6 minutes or so, right here on LBC News. Let's get some business before that. Energy industry is warning household bills could reach as much as $3,000 a year. More from Susanna Streeter, who's Senior Markets Analyst at Hargreaves Lansdown.
It certainly is eye-watering stuff, and real fresh fears about just how high the cost of living squeeze will go. Now, this is because crude oil rose above $119 a barrel to the highest level since May 2012, a little bit earlier. Also, gas prices have surged as well, and this is all added to concerns about just how people will afford to pay these rising fuel bills. So prices at the pump set to go up again, and there have been some people filling up, trying to fill up their cars to take advantage of the current price because they feel as though it may go higher. Obviously, there is no concern, though, I have to stress this, that there is a shortage of supplies. So that isn't a problem, but the price is likely to go up further because of this mounting oil price, and that's the warning from the RAC. Also, we're hearing from Energy UK. Now, this is the energy industry body, which has said because of these rising prices we're seeing of crude oil in the gas markets as well. Bills could be anywhere between £2,500 and £3,000 by October.
Extraordinary number that. It's really tough, the cost of living for many in 2022. Thank you, Susanna. Jim Diamond here, 3:17. Stand by for headlines.
LBC News. Weather.
Dull and overcast for north and western parts of the UK. Brighter in Northern Ireland with some bright spells spreading east. Windy in the north of Scotland, a high of 12 degrees. Rain pushing into Scotland and the north tonight. Heavy at times. Drier for Northern Ireland, Wales and the West Country. Clear skies. A low of -1 in Northern Ireland but milder elsewhere. Further rain tomorrow for Scotland and the north of England. Brighter in the west. Few isolated showers. Overcast elsewhere.
LBC News.
Today's $1.99 wrap of the day is the barbecue bacon and chicken one. Guaranteed to cause flavour envy. Picture a soft and sear wrap filled with
crispy chicken.
Lush, smoky barbecue sauce. Some delicious bacon too, yes please. Today's $1.99 barbecue bacon and chicken one. So big on flavour, everyone will want some. Only at McDonald's. From 11 a.m.
Pizza.
Food's here.
Oh great, I'm starving.
Right, you lot, come on in. One at a time. That's it. Hide the pieces over there. Careful, Shaz, don't drop them.
Stop.
You next, they'll stack them up.
Stop.
That's it. Hide those pieces.
Stop! What's all this?
The pieces you rang for. Where's the rest of you?
What do you mean?
You said bring enough for 200 people.
Hungry. I said 2 hungry people.
Whoa.
Need a hearing test? Should have gone to Specsavers. Book online today.
Where'd you want the garlic bread?
We don't do slapdash. We don't do sloppy. We don't do bodge jobs. And we never do that'll do. We do a job properly. We're Trust a Trader, and we're proud of all our members and the great work they do in homes like yours. So when you need something doing, from locksmiths to landscaping, just type it into trustatrader.com and you'll get reputable, reviewed tradespeople in your area. Because you can always trust a trader.
Trustatrader.com.
Sarah Chang could smell something fishy.
Oh, that'll be the clam chowder, our soup of the day.
She was being set up,
Yeah, I know.
and she needed to find out why.
Well, BT set me up. Their experts just came in and installed the Wi-Fi.
Oh, give me something to work with here, Sarah.
Cut the drama with BT's expert setup service. So it's all business,
No drama.
Search BT Business to find out more. BT, beyond limits.
And then they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Night, Dad.
ISBN number 0130998634. Cover photograph by... Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy our delicious 99p cheeseburger, part of the McDonald's Saver menu. From 11 a.m, price and participation may vary. Give your new kitten the love they deserve, and Pets in a Pickle will cover the rest. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinnapickle.co.uk.
You, waiting to get your first home? It's long. But with a Bartley's Family Springboard Mortgage and some help from the family, you can make your moneyverse work for you. That dream home. It's yours. Hosting your nearest and dearest. Tick their deposit returned with interest. Double tick. Unlock your dream home with the Bartley's Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you. Bartley's. Home may be repossessed if payments missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
The Admiral and Mrs. Taylor set out on a lovely picnic in a hot air balloon. But things didn't go to plan.
Pesky seagulls, they ruined everything.
I know.
They not only wrecked my son's car with my roast chicken, but they also demolished Mum's chimney and her garden.
But you saved the day with Admiral Multi-Cover.
Mrs. Taylor insured her family cars and homes, all at different addresses, on a single multi-cover policy. Admiral Multi-Cover, rewardingly simple. LBC News. Latest travel, next.
And then they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Night, Dad.
ISBN number 0130998634. Cover photograph by... Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy our delicious 99p cheeseburger, part of the McDonald's Saver menu. From 11 a.m, price and participation may vary. Give your new puppy the love they deserve. And Pets in a Pickle will cover the rest. For pet insurance policies as you...
Navigate to Chipping Camden.
Chipping Camden.
You can say I'm finished to set the location, or change followed by the address item you wish to edit.
I'm finished.
From Ukraine and Russia, Moscow claims it's captured the border of Kherson, its first takeover since the conflict started. President Putin has told his French counterpart over the phone, Emmanuel Macron, Russia will achieve its goal in Ukraine. Well, it comes also this afternoon on LBC News, as we have been hearing on day 8 of the invasion. More than 1 million people have now fled the country. The Disasters Emergency Committee are raising money for food, water and blankets. Salah Saeed is the chief executive.
Like us, taking their kids to school, watching TV, having meals, and just getting on with their lives, and now that has been turned upside down.
Formula One's cancelled its entire contract with the Russian Grand Prix. It means there won't be a race in the country for the foreseeable future. And the family of Sarah Everard have paid tribute to her on the first anniversary of her murder, saying they've been overwhelmed by public support. Former police officer Wayne Couzens is serving a whole life term for Sarah's kidnap and murder.
LBC News. Travel.
On the Underground, the Central District, Piccadilly and Northern Line have a very limited amount of trains running at the end of their lines. Nothing through Central London, and all the other lines remain suspended. It's because of the ongoing strike. On the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 lanes are closed northbound at junction 25 at the Brian Clough Way. That's following an accident. So there are queues on the approach. In Cheshire, very busy on the M56 eastbound to junction 7 at Bowden, where a car's broken down. In Hertfordshire, the A1M southbound exit slip road is closed at junction 7 at the A6.
After 300 yards, turn left.
Right.
Just off the motorway, and there are queues on the approach. I'm Joanne Webb. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
Now turn left.
It is the 3rd of March, some 7-8 days ago, Russia invading Ukraine, and the devastation.
After a quarter of a mile, turn left onto the B4035.
Are fleeing the country because of fear of the Russian soldiers and the bombings and the shootings that have been going on. Well, delegates from Ukraine and Russia are meeting for peace talks in Belarus after the first couple of days of this conflict. Moscow claims to have taken over its first city, with reports of the administration building captured in Kherson. The mayor appealing to troops not to shoot at civilians, while asking residents not to provoke them. Alexander.
After 200 yards, turn left onto the B4035.
Russian occupation forever. My family is in very poor situation because my dad is very sick. He has a cancer 4th stage, and he is dying, but he wants to die as Ukrainian.
LBC.
Now turn left.
In Ukraine, it claimed 9 people have been killed following an airstrike on 2 schools and houses in Chernihiv. Dashcam footage earlier caught the moment a missile hit a block of flats.
After 1.5 miles, you will reach your destination.
Right, I know where I am.
It is feared a humanitarian disaster is unfolding in Mariupol, which has been under attack for almost 2 days. Hundreds are believed to be dead. Russian troops have cut off water, electricity and heat supplies. Speaking to this program, the Disasters Emergency Committee CEO Salah Saeed.
We're working with 13 of our member charities who are very used to working in hostile and conflict situations. They are supporting and working alongside local volunteers and local charities and the Ukrainian people themselves, who were the first responders and are working around the clock to make sure that their country folk are also getting the support.
Well, we know that the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has said the NHS must stop using energy supplied by the Russian-owned firm Gazprom. More than a dozen NHS trusts are thought to be supplied by that firm, along with several local councils. There'll be no Russian or Belarusian athletes at the Winter Paralympics in Beijing following a U-turn on yesterday's decision. We've been speaking to a journalist, a conflict journalist, who is in Kyiv, where, of course, they're concerned about the arrival of Russian soldiers. Here is Oz Akateji.
There have been some real problems with food and supplies over the last few days. But today it looks like a lot of the shops have had a restock. Not a full restock, there's still loads of empty shelves, but there were staff putting new stuff out on the shelves, so that was very encouraging. And I haven't seen anywhere near as many queues for food. However, I did also go on the metro network today, to have a look around, there are significantly fewer people here. I mean, like it was almost empty, the metro network. There weren't loads of people living there. There were a few, but there weren't loads of people, which leads me to believe from the small area that I can view in central Kyiv that a lot of people who were there have fled to other places now.
Do you feel safe driving around?
I feel like the territorial defense forces and the Ukrainian military are doing their best to keep people safe here.
What about the approach of the convoy? When are they anticipated to get to Kyiv?
I mean, we've been waiting for it for days, really. It's stalled. They're having fuel and food supply problems, and yeah, the Ukrainian armed forces are doing a very solid job of defending the city from the Russian fascist invasion.
What about the sirens? How often are they going off, the warning alarms?
You know, they go off every few hours. I will say that anecdotally, I feel like they're happening less often than they were maybe say 2 days ago. There seems to been a bit of a lull. Maybe, I mean, I don't want to tempt fate here, but it seems like Russia is either keeping their powder dry, or they're struggling to have the military impact that they wanted to have on this city.
Well, that is the conflict journalist who is in Kyiv, Oz Katerji there. And of course, we thank him very much indeed, and all the reporters and anybody who's contributing whilst speaking to us from Ukraine in the middle of this war conflict.
The news in 20 minutes, every 20 minutes. This is LBC News.
So in the Scottish Parliament today at Holyrood, some legislation dropping and some calling it controversial. It is essentially a legislation aimed to make it easier for transgender people to be legally recognised as their preferred gender. Published today. Phil McDonald's been looking at it, our reporter who joins me now live from Scotland, and tell us the latest. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Jim. Well, that debate is taking place at Holyrood just now. The Equality Secretary, Shona Robertson, who we'll hear from in a moment, has been on her feet answering questions from MSPs on this new bill that has come before us today. The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill, which sets out certain proposals to speed up the time it takes to get a gender recognition certificate, a GRC, that allows people to change their gender legally. And what essentially the changes involve is lowering the age at which trans people can get these documents from 18 down to 16, and it also cuts the amount of time that it takes to get one as well. So it's going to come from 2 years down to 3 months, a significant change indeed. Now, this would include a mandatory 3-month reflection period, confirming at the end of this that a trans person wishes to proceed with their application for a GRC. Now, this new bill has been largely welcomed by LGBTI groups, but it has been controversial and has upset certain groups in Scotland. But I've been speaking to Vic Valentine, who is from Scottish Trans, and they say that it would make some important changes to the law.
At the minute, the requirement to provide a psychiatric diagnosis and really intrusive medical evidence reports is something that lots of trans people feel kind of really unfairly stigmatise our identities and make it seem as though who we are and how we live our lives is a medical condition rather than, you know, just who we happen to be.
Now, it has been quite a strongly worded debate, and I don't just mean today, but I mean over the past few years, when it was clear that we were going to see some movement towards reforming the Gender Recognition Act in Scotland. Some feminist organisations have raised some concerns that it could result in the loss of women-only spaces such as refuges, hospital wards, toilets and changing rooms, effectively placing these spaces under a grey area that could potentially be exploited by predatory individuals who could, in theory, get past the law and have a severe impact on women's safety. But Shona Robertson, who has been speaking at Holyrood today, spoke to us earlier on, and she has reassured people who may be worried about what this bill could do.
It's important
avoid repercussions if certain MSPs do go against the party whip. We know that the Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, hasn't specified whether or not she will vote for it, for example. So the front bench certainly not united on this, but parties like the Greens and the Liberal Democrats from Scotland have come out and said that they are supporting it, whereas the Scottish Conservatives have raised certain objections as well. So there's no guarantee that it will get through Holyrood, but it is certainly something that the trans community in Scotland is certainly pushing for, and will make a big difference to their lives, I should say, if it does indeed get the go-ahead.
Phil McDonald, thank you for explaining that story live in Scotland for us.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
The Ukraine authorities are saying that at least 22 civilians have been killed in a Russian airstrike on the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. Rescuers are currently searching through the debris. That is what we are hearing in the past couple of moments. We will monitor the very latest for you live. Ukrainian politicians have gathered today in defiance in their parliament building in Kyiv to continue democratic proceedings despite the ongoing attack by Russia. With many wearing bulletproof vests, they've sung the national anthem. Well, more than 1 million Ukrainians have now fled their country since the invasion began. The UN is calling it the swiftest exodus of refugees this century. From the Disasters Emergency Committee, the CEO Salah Said.
Today we launched the Disasters Emergency Committee Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, and we're already inundated with calls and offers of support from the generous public up and down the land. Obviously responding to the horrors we've all seen on our screens, as you rightly said there, 1 million people now who've fled the conflict in Ukraine and crossed into neighbouring countries such as Poland, Hungary and Moldova, and leaving behind their homes, their families, their jobs and their livelihoods. These are desperate times, desperate situations. People need...
Have you got a number in terms of how much has been raised?
Not yet, but tomorrow we promise to have that number. The money's coming in thick and fast. That's thanks to the British public, and of course the UK government is aid matching up to £20 million. For each pound someone gives, the government will give a pound on top of that, so your aid will go even further.
Yeah, tell me about how the aid is getting through to the people of Ukraine. How does it get to Kyiv?
So we're working with 13 of our member charities who are very used to working in hostile and conflict situations. They are supporting and working alongside local volunteers and local charities and the Ukrainian people themselves, who were the first responders and are working around the clock to make sure that their country folk are also getting the support. So the issue is not about food on the ground or blankets on the ground. It's about having enough money to be able to buy these items. That's why we're asking people to donate. Go to dec.org.uk and give as generously as you can, please.
And people can be reassured that the money will go direct to the people.
The funds that we collect through the DEC only distributed through our member charities and local partners on the ground. So it does not go through any governments. It directly benefits the people who need our support at this hour of need for all the people in Ukraine.
LBC News. Weather.
Dull and overcast for north and western parts of the UK. Brighter in Northern Ireland with some bright spells spreading east. Windy in the north of Scotland, a high of 12 degrees. Rain pushing into Scotland and the north tonight. Heavy at times. Drier for Northern Ireland, Wales and the West Country. Clear skies. A low of -1 in Northern Ireland, but milder elsewhere. Further rain tomorrow for Scotland and the north of England. Brighter in the west. Few isolated showers. Overcast elsewhere.
LBC News.
We've got it at Selco. Selco is where the trade goes.
At Selco Builders Warehouse, we've got real deals on a wide range of trade quality building products. In March, we've got 2.4 by 1.2 metre sheets of styling 18mm OSB3 for only £26.49 ex-VAT. Now that's a real deal. Find even more real deals at Selco Builders Warehouse and online at selcobw.com.
We've got it at Selco. Selco is where the trade goes.
That charged at 20%.
1977. Sweaty clubs, screaming singers, volume turned to full. I loved it. maybe I went too often, because recently my hearing's not been so good. But now I'm back. Got sorted out of Specsavers with their advanced hearing aids. Was like music to my ears.
To find out more or book a free hearing test, search Specsavers Hearing.
Booking a hotel can be a bit of a hassle. The fake reviews, the endless options, not to mention the fear of getting a bad deal. But with Premier Inn, you can cast all those worries aside, because with us, you know exactly what you're getting. Like great value family rooms in over 800 locations, plenty of parking, and delicious food to please everyone, even the fussy ones. So you can family trip without any of the faff. Premier Inn. Rest easy. Only available to book at premierinn.com.
At Kia, we believe movement inspires ideas. Take the all-new Kia Sportage. Our sporty SUV with a striking new exterior and advanced interior creates the space to get inspired. Available to order now with hybrid electric technology. And you get £500 towards your PCP deposit and 3.9% APR representative when you order by the 31st of March. Search Kia Sportage. Kia. Movement that inspires. 3.9% APR representative, Kia Finance.
30 million people around the world are just like me.
I value being able to
Easily build an investment portfolio.
I value knowing my investment firm
Has been recommended by which 3 years in a row.
And I value knowing I'm with a company that's picked
Clients first for over 45 years.
Join the 30 million investors around the world who value getting Vanguard value.
Hey, that's exactly
What I was going to say.
Vanguard. Value to investors. When investing, your capital is at risk.
My prostate cancer was thankfully caught in the nick of time, but it shouldn't be down to luck.
Men at higher risk are
aged over 50.
Those with a family history of the disease.
Or black men, or the 45.
Check your risk of prostate cancer now. Search Risk Checker or visit prostatecanceruk.org. Men, we are with you.
whatever your home and garden needs, we've got the perfect people for the job. So when you want a job doing properly, you can always trust a trader.
And then they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Night, Dad.
ISBN number 0130-998634. Cover photograph by...
Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy our delicious 99p cheeseburger, part of the McDonald's Saver menu. From 11 a.m, price and participation may vary.
News, sport, travel, weather in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global Newsroom, it's 3:40. I'm Jim Diamond. Good afternoon. Peace talks are resuming in Belarus between delegates from Ukraine and Russia. Moscow claims it's captured the port of Kherson. It's the first takeover since the conflict started. Hundreds are feared dead in Mariupol, which has seen heavy shelling for almost 2 days. President Putin has told his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, Russia will achieve its goal in Ukraine. A 40-mile-long convoy heading to the capital, Kyiv, is said to be some distance away right now. Analysts believe it has been held up by breakdowns and Ukrainian resistance. And Ukraine claims at least 22 civilians have been killed in a Russian airstrike on the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. Rescuers are searching the debris.
LBC News. Travel.
On the Underground, the Central Line is running to and from White City to both Ealing Broadway and West Ruislip. Also, Central Line trains are running east of Loughton. The Piccadilly District and Northern Line also have some trains running, but only at the ends of the line, not through central London. Obviously, it's all down to the strike, and all the other lines remain suspended. Lots of problems on the motorways. Firstly, in Derbyshire, there are delays about half an hour on the M1 northbound up to junction 25 at Brian Clough Way. That's all down to an accident. In Kent, on the M25 anti-clockwise, it's slow to the Dartford Tunnel. That's following an accident. And also on the M25, but in Essex, clockwise Keys to junction 26. I'm Joanne Webb. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
Good afternoon. Drive is live at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Chris Golds will guide you through the very latest stories as they develop. We have been hearing, good afternoon, I'm Jim Diamond. Officials in a city of Ukraine are warning they're being destroyed following heavy shelling for almost 2 days. Hundreds are feared dead in the port of Mariupol, where soldiers are said to be cutting off food, water, heat and electricity. An airstrike's been reported in Chernihiv in the northern Ukrainian city. At least 22 civilians are said to have died. Rescuers are searching the debris there. We've also been hearing about a phone call that has taken place today between the French President Macron and the President of Russia, President Putin. 90 minutes they spent on the phone together, talking about the war, talking about the conflict. President Putin telling Macron that it is going according to his plan.
Really?
As it stands.
Must have had a really shit
although
plan,
a number
then.
of demands being made there. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is saying there is nowhere for any of Putin's cronies to hide. She seeks to hit more Russian oligarchs with sanctions. She's in Lithuania right now discussing the situation. 1 million people are thought now to have become refugees by leaving their homeland. We're going to have the very latest for you live. Let's find out about the response that has been going on to this conflict. The charity Shelter Box is responding to the crisis and sending a team to Eastern Europe. Well, they're based in Cornwall. Let's go live to the southwest, and LBC's Andy Valentine has more. Andy.
Jim, Ukraine is asking for aid agencies like Shelterbox to be able to set up a humanitarian corridor for their people. Now, that would allow for the safe passage of food, medicines, ambulances, and the evacuation of children. Now, the main point is that this corridor is free from combat, but the biggest concern is whether Russia will abide by those rules. Well, as you say, I've been speaking to Chief Executive of Cornwall-based Shelterbox, Sam Shrikanthan, and he says it's desperately needed.
We need to be clear around how reliable it is and whether combatants in this conflict are going to honour it, because it's going to put civilians and humanitarian aid workers at risk. We also need to be clear about what the purpose of the corridor is and whether it is for civilians to flee the conflict zone or whether it is to go there and provide
not
aid.
already going slow enough then.
Because we've heard reports that in some occupied cities, especially in the east of Ukraine, power, food and water is now in short supply. The numbers are horrific and could get a lot worse. More than 50,000 people a day crossing the border into Poland, 1 million overall into Europe via 4 different countries since the conflict started. But that could rise to 4 million, around a tenth of the Ukraine population. Many are fleeing because of the danger and unconfirmed reports of looting, threats and beatings by Russian troops. Well, the University of Exeter's Dr. Oral Sari is an expert in international law. He's in no doubt that the war is unjustified and breaking numerous international treaties.
War crimes, crimes against humanity, these are all subject to individual criminal responsibility. So Putin, other political leaders, down to a private soldier may well be held to account on the basis of having committed violations of their obligations under international law and held criminally accountable.
Well, already a number of complaints and legal actions from various countries has started against Russia. Jim, evidence being gathered should it be needed in the future. Not that it will help the millions trying to flee Ukraine with all they can carry, or those left behind under constant threat and fear of their lives.
Andy Valentine, thank you for that live update from the southwest.
The news in 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes. LBC News.
Well, let's continue our coverage on what we have been learning today in terms of the number of people that are fleeing the danger zones. We've heard from a conflict journalist a little bit earlier on today, but let's hear from the freelance journalist Christina Shomelshil, who is on the Poland-Ukraine border where refugees are crossing. This is what she told me earlier.
There's only hundreds at least refugees here. We're at the train station that's closest to the border. This is where a lot of people head to go to either other parts of Poland or other countries. Some have told me they're going to Germany. Other people have told me that people have gone on to Austria or even Amsterdam. Many people don't really know where they're going to yet, but they're getting a lot of good guidance. There's also a lot of support. People are getting free SIM cards, for example. There's people working at the train station who are able to speak a lot of different languages. languages, because it's not just Ukrainians here. There is sometimes also other foreigners, foreign students who have been studying in Ukraine who are now leaving. So overall, the situation is relatively organized, but still a lot of confused people, so a certain level of chaos.
But clearly, Poland are welcoming the Ukrainian people that are fleeing this war with open arms. Would you say that's fair?
For the most part, yes. Poland has about 1 million Ukrainians already just living here. Numbers right now are over 500,000 in terms of refugees who have entered this country. From what I can tell, I haven't seen any issues. People have been really helpful towards each other and happy to offer that help and keen to offer it. I think that there's just a certain level of recognition that these people are really, really similar to them. And of course, Polish people themselves feel a certain level of fear that they too could at some point face attacks from Russia as well.
The Ukrainian men who were aged between 18 and 60 were told to stay and fight. Are you seeing men in these groups of refugees?
Not many. So I've seen men who are probably not Ukrainian. People who, again, like foreign students perhaps, or just people who are foreigners who aren't Ukrainian. But yes, the vast majority are women and younger children. I've seen a few men here and there with families, and I have heard from people who made the crossing that there have been a few men, again, with families, not single men. But for the most part, it's women and children. You
must have heard some extraordinary first-hand stories from people that have fled, and they must have told you about in what form of transport. We've seen images of whatever train services were running in the last couple of days, completely full to the brim.
Yes, so I was speaking to a couple of young women from Ghana, actually. They were medical students in Kharkiv, which has been badly hit by the attacks. They went first on a train from Kharkiv to Lviv and then came to Poland, and they talked to me about a high level of discrimination that they were facing, which many other people have talked about, people who are not white, the ways that they were dealing with authorities in Ukraine. They had a hard time getting on the train. There was hundreds of people on the train, and these young women were telling me that they were only one of eight black people on the train, or eight people who were not white, at least, on the train. That there was a man who was not Ukrainian. I believe they said he was black, and he was with his family, and he didn't have to stay because he wasn't a Ukrainian, so he wasn't being called to service for the Ukrainian military, and that he had to really fight, they said, to get on that train.
Do people need any sort of medical help? What about medicine and access to things like that, which people need in their day-to-day lives? If you just pack your stuff up, you're leaving in a hurry. This is less than 7 days ago. People were living in relative peace and harmony, a normal life, and then suddenly their whole world is just flipped in seconds, days.
I haven't on the border heard of any issues. I mean, we are in an EU country, and they do not stay on the border for very long. I would guess about maybe a few hours. They get on a train, then they go to another city, a larger city. So I spent a couple of years in Ukraine from the revolution to Crimea, and spent a lot of time in East Ukraine. Access to medicine, it will be a huge issue in Ukraine, and we've heard this from humanitarian organizations, because there's so many people who are left behind, especially who are elderly. Either they don't want to leave their homes, or they cannot leave. And so many elderly people have these chronic conditions like blood pressure, where they need medicine.
Wow, thank you very much indeed for the update we got from the journalist who is on the border of Poland and Ukraine, Christina Shermill-Shield. It is 3:51 right now.
This is LBC News.
Change of tone, and if you're in London, it's all about the tube strike today. If you're not in London, just imagine how nice it is to be in the countryside where you don't have to worry about the underground underground 11 lines are not operating today. It's because of a strike earlier at Waterloo Station. Charlotte, you explain why.
I can see just over the road the big metal gates to Waterloo Underground are chained shut and people are pouring in and out of the main station. They've been phoning family and friends, telling them they're going to be late. I can see people frantically checking their phones, working out the best way to get where they need to be and asking people for help as these chaotic tube strikes continue. There are next to no tubes running and most tube stations are completely closed. These people have told me it has been a nightmare for them.
It's all over the place. You have to get a cab, you can't get a cab, or it's very pricey. I mean, all the tubes, usually with the strikes, there is still service, some kind of service. Right now it's nothing, so it takes you triple that amount of time to get home.
Getting a train in is the first time I've been in London for tube strikes at home.
How long has it added on to your journey?
It took me about an hour and a half.
It's a shame if you can't afford Ubers and stuff. I mean, I had to get an Uber from King's Cross to Clapham on Tuesday and it was like £60.
And you did that, you know, for a safety point of view?
Well, yeah, and it was really no kind of other way instead of getting 3 different buses and you kind of just want to get home.
Well, this almost feels a bit like the calm before the storm, as we've not even hit the evening rush hour yet this morning. And on Tuesday, we saw scenes of absolutely huge queues for buses too packed that they just drive past anyway and leave those queues of people behind them. Packed trains as well, really busy platforms. And I expect more of that tonight. And again, it's expected to continue into tomorrow morning because these things don't just go straight back to normal the next day, because all the tubes aren't in the depots that they're supposed to be in, where they're supposed to start their day. So it's something that's going to take a little while to sort out. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan said that people should work from home today if they can. But of course, lots of people have gone back to work after COVID. Their managers expect them in the offices. It's still really busy here in central London. And Sadiq Khan insists the members of the RMT union that they're striking in a row over government funding cuts. They fear it will hit their pensions. He says he's invited them for negotiations and they've refused to get round the table. So he was urging them to do that yesterday, but instead what we're seeing now is a second day of the underground being practically out of service altogether. And we're expecting a really, really busy rush hour this evening, again with packed buses and packed trains.
Well, I'm Charlotte Lynch at London Waterloo, and the good news is we have a regular travel updates to let you know the latest picture. But there won't be any change in terms of tonight. If you are hoping to get on a tube train, that's going to be back at some point tomorrow. But did you know that the annual passenger number 1.35 billion? Obviously, I'm talking about pre-pandemic days. The length of the network is 402 kilometres. I didn't know that there were 23 escalators at Waterloo Station alone. 451 across the entire network. The deepest shaft Hampstead, the shortest lift shaft at King's Cross. And what else can I tell you about the tube? I'll tell you one more thing about the tube. The station with the most platforms is Baker Street, 10. Can you believe that? It's 5 to 4. Stand by. Drivers coming up with Chris Gold still have all the news you need to know.
LBC News. Weather.
Dull and overcast for north and western parts of the UK. Brighter in Northern Ireland with some bright spells spreading east. Windy in the north of Scotland, a high of 12 degrees. Rain pushing into Scotland and the north tonight. Heavy at times. Drier for Northern Ireland, Wales and the West Country. Clear skies. A low of -1 in Northern Ireland, but milder elsewhere. Further rain tomorrow for Scotland and the north of England. Brighter in the west. Few isolated showers. Overcast elsewhere.
LBC News.
Whether you're searching for record players or pianos, how you pay matters. Visa helps protect you from payment fraud online. Visa, a network working for everyone.
This is the sound of business owners making tax digital with Sage.
Back inside Boss. VAT calculated.
Morning grind, Bossed. VAT submitted.
Flower displays bossed. VAT nailed.
Be ready to boss making tax digital. Get 3 months free Sage accounting software at sage.com. Renews from £12 a month. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, traffic. We're going to be so late. Oh, we're going to miss the vows. Everyone will see us sneak in. So embarrassing. We'll have to get changed in a lay-by. Oh, look. McDonald's. See, they're doing a chicken Big Mac. Probably best to just blend into the crowd after. It's not like we're family.
Welcome back, the Chicken Big Mac. But hurry, it's only here till 15th of March. Served after 11 a.m. Subject to availability at participating restaurants until the 15th of March.
Driving is not a game. If you tailgate the car in front, the closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Leave at least a 2-second gap. Search national highways for more information.
A battle has been waging on since the invention of the wheel. The battle for the front seat.
Thanks for front seats.
It's that innate human desire to own the view, the space, the power. The all-new Honda HR-V Hybrid is here to bring about peace, with back seats that feel as good as the front.
I'll sit in the back.
The raised chassis and low window frames from front to back give everyone the views. The fuel tank hump is gone for more foot space, and the legroom is roomy. And in terms of power, well, there's USB ports in the back too. So everyone's a winner. Honda, the power of dreams. Available on selected grades.
At B&Q, we have a range of over 2,000 beautiful plants. So you can bring back birds, bring back bees, bring back nature to your garden. Therapy for you and your corner of the planet. Shop our range of over 2,000 plants at B&Q. Range availability varies by store.
Whatever your home and garden needs, we've got the perfect people for the job. So when you want a job doing properly, you can always trust a trader.
Outdoor Trust cerebral palsy. Erwin Mitchell got her the help she needed. They gave us hope for Haley's future. That was the human touch that mattered. Our legal and financial experts understand the impact of a serious injury. We'll help you receive the best possible support, medical care and rehabilitation. We really get to know you so you can get the most out of life. Erwin Mitchell, the expert hand with the human touch. Find out more at erwinmitchell.com. Authorised and regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority.
LBC News. The latest news headlines. Next.
It was the worst day of Fiona Simpson's professional life.
It really wasn't that bad.
The heavens poured.
It was a light drizzle.
And Fiona had a virtual sales pitch with the devil.
It was with Neville, our client. We're with BT, so our connection didn't play up.
Way to ruin a story, Fiona.
Cut the drama with BT's Always Connected guarantee. So it's all business.
No drama.
Search BT Business to find out more. BT, beyond limits. T's and C's apply. 89% UK availability. 4G coverage required.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC News.
where the news never stops. This is LBC News.
From Global's newsroom at 4 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Chris Golds. Here is the very latest. Peace talks between Ukraine and Russia have resumed in Belarus as the war enters its second week. Emmanuel Macron of France rang Vladimir Putin earlier to say he's deluding himself if he thinks the invasion is going well. It says heavy shelling is continuing in several key Ukrainian cities. Moscow claiming it's now in control of Kherson. Officials in Cherniv in the northeast say 22 people have died after a Russian airstrike hit 2 schools and houses. Julia's left her part of that part of Ukraine, has made her way to the west of the country.
I want to come back. I think maybe Russia stop and Putin stop, and I think I come back to my home, really, to my relatives. I hope.
The UN claims more than 1 million people have fled Ukraine so far. The Disasters Emergency Committee are raising money for food, water and blankets to support refugees. We'll have more on the invasion of Ukraine next here on LBC News. Elsewhere, Sarah Everard's family say they miss her all the time, 1 year on from her murderer by a serving police officer. And Her Majesty...
Officials in Cherniv in the northeast of Ukraine say 22 people have died in a Russian airstrike on 2 schools and houses. Talks have resumed between delegates from Ukraine and Russia in Belarus. Vadim Ivchenko is a Ukrainian MP. He's told LBC what he wants to see out of the latest negotiations.
It's just green pass for the civilians which would like to leave their cities from like Kharkiv, Mariupol, Kherson and others. That's it. And the second one, we would like to stop bombing and to stop using prohibited missiles or prohibited military different bombs.
During a phone call with the French President, Vladimir Putin says Russia will achieve its goals. Emmanuel Macron says his counterpart in Moscow wants to take all of Ukraine and worse is to come. Russia is facing a war crimes investigation after its military was accused of bombing civilians. The UN estimates eventually 4 million Ukrainians will leave their homes, which is about 10% of the population. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 147 points at 72.81. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.20. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England tonight, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England, a low of 1. Rain lingering over Scotland and northern England tomorrow, drier with sunny spells in the west, isolated showers across Wales and the southwest, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Tom Swarbrick.
Just got 4. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Tom Swarbrick in for Eddie Mayer here on LBC. Hope we find you very well. Coming up,
it's all over the place. We have to get a cab, we can't get a cab. I mean, all the tools, usually with the strikes, there is still service. Now it's nothing.
A second day of tube strikes brings misery for millions in London.
There are huge queues for buses that just drive past anyway because they're too packed. I'm LBC's Charlotte Lynch at Hammersmith Station.
The latest this hour is the arduous journey to get home probably begins a bit early.
Call 0345 60 60 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
Very good afternoon to you. The latest this hour in Ukraine is that key cities in the south are beginning to fall. Kherson is the first major city to have reportedly succumbed to Russian forces. The port city of Mariupol is encircled and is being constantly shelled. The massive armed Russian convoy remains some 30 kilometers outside Kyiv, bogged down by a combination of Ukrainian insurgents and mechanical failure. Meanwhile, rumors grow that Putin may introduce martial law in Russia. An EU official reported by Reuters says they are picking up signs that internal anger to the war in Russia may mean Putin triggers conscription. Closer to home, frustration is growing about the UK's response to the oligarchs. Sanctions, it turns out, are not really having an effect because government lawyers have run into legal difficulties when hoping to apply them. The Times reports that the Foreign Office and National Crime Agency have been unable to prove that there are reasonable grounds for designating the UK's most prominent oligarchs for sanctions because they've struggled to link their finances to the Putin regime. That means a case has to be built against individuals, which could take weeks or months. All the while, these rich as creases oligarchs are given forewarning and are able to move their money. Some in the EU are calling on Britain to move faster. The legislation currently in place means there is an 18-month grace period for foreign companies to say who owns property in the UK. Labour wants the government to reduce that. The suggestion this afternoon is that the government will move. It's reported the government is also considering emergency legislation to try and get round some of these difficulties and move faster. This is a sanctions lawyer, Nigel Kushner, speaking on LBC earlier.
There'll be no assets to freeze, at least in terms of cash, because the cash will have been dissipated long ago. Less easy with property and companies and so on, because it takes time to sell those and you don't want to sell them at a fire sale price. If you own a property in Eaton Square in Belgravia and you go on the sanctions list, it is frozen. It still belongs to you. You can still live in it, but you can't actually do anything in relation to it. You can't rent it out to someone. You can't even pay for the upkeep without a specific license from the OFSI, the UK Sanctions Enforcement Authority. You can't do anything. You can't even pay your lawyer without your lawyer getting a special license. And don't forget, this is all at a time when your bank accounts will all be closed, and the only banks that will deal with you if you're Russian is a Russian bank, who will likely be sanctioned themselves.
Sanctions lawyer Nigel Kushner speaking on LBC earlier. Why is it that sanctions are taking so long to have any real effect? When
Because
Boris Johnson says the UK has been leading the world in applying these sanctions, is that true? Is it reasonable to expect that the government's words have real-world meaning? And this claim of leading the world in this sanctioning of Russian oligarchs, is it accurate or is it bluster? 03456060973. I'm joined for the next hour by two people. Jameson Firestone is the co-founder of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign and is now a sanctions lawyer for Alexei Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation. And Tom Keating is director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Studies at RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute. Thanks to you both for joining me this hour. Jameson, let me start with you, and can I start with a real basic question, if I may? What is an oligarch?
Well, it tends to be a very, very rich businessman who made his fortune by not just doing business with the Russian government, but by cutting deals with the Russian government and taking control of huge amounts of assets, like all of the metal production in the country or all of the gas production, by making deals with the government where often the government people get pieces of the money.
And there are numerous oligarchs, Russian oligarchs, that are swimming around Europe and in particular Britain.
Oh, absolutely. It's their favorite place.
Why?
Well, because they can live in a nice place that's very unlike the environment that they've created at home. Here we have laws and we have stability, and also these oligarchs get into a lot of fights every once in a while with each other and with the government. They never know who's up and who's down, and so this is kind of a place they can park their families to live in a nice place, go to school, buy nice things, and kind of be out of the fray.
Can you walk us through briefly the examples of the absolutely rampant corruption that you have come across in your dealings in Russia?
Well, my own personal story is really quite shocking. I set up Russia's first independent foreign law firm, and one of the lawyers working for me, a man by the name of Sergei Magnitsky, discovered a bunch of Russian government officials issuing fake tax refunds to hundreds of millions of pounds were being robbed by these people in the form of fake tax refunds. And so Sergei turned them in, and he caught them red-handed. I mean, we had like little old grandmother lady sitting in the tax inspectorate who put $42 million US in her pockets and went out shopping in Dubai, buying villas on the Palm Island. And when he reported this crime, he showed that we could show that the police officers all got millions of dollars, the bank owner got millions of dollars, and what did they do? They arrested Sergei, they tortured him in a prison, they killed him in a prison. Then they blamed the crime on him, and they tried him after his death for the very crime he reported. It was the first trial of a dead man in 850 years. So that's just how corrupt and how bad it is there. People go into government and rob their own government.
I see in your telling of this story that the grandmotherly clerk received a payment of something like £31 million for her involvement in this.
That's correct. The lady with the signature who made it all possible was compensated very nicely. And the police officers who were involved, they all have apartments. They have million-dollar apartments, and they drive fast cars. And none of this stuff is actually registered in their names. It's registered in the names of their pensioner parents, who never had a real money-earning job. And they all, until recently at least, used to come to Europe and travel. Now, particularly people here got sanctioned, but the really rich people in Russia haven't been sanctioned, or they're only getting started now.
We'll come on to that in just a moment. Jameson, stay there if you would. Tom Keating is with us too, Director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Studies at RUSI. We've heard from Jameson there about some of the people, some of the ways in which they get their money. In what ways is it such a security risk for us?
So, I mean, this money has been coming to the UK for 25 years, so this is not a new issue, and successive governments have kind of failed to deal with the issue. And when money is coming to a country over so many decades, it finds a way into institutions, into different people's pockets. And of course, as soon as that money starts to find a way into your pocket, you are to some degree beholden to those individuals. So it basically buys influence.
When you say that this has been a problem that has been failed to have been dealt with by numerous governments over the years, is it a case that the governments have tried and haven't been able to link the person to the ill-gotten gains, or they've just looked past the ill-gotten gains?
They've generally looked past the ill-gotten gains. I mean, David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, tried to start a kind of an anti-corruption drive, but of course we know what happened to him. He was derailed by Brexit. And so really it's not something that has been taken seriously. And you can see this because the investment in the law enforcement response in this country has been absolutely abysmal. So if you really cared about it, you'd be giving the National Crime Agency and other law enforcement agencies the resources they need to do the job. The thing which is really important to note is that we're not short of laws in the UK for dealing with this kind of issue. What we're short of is gumption and enforcement activity.
Could you, is there not a difficulty in basically viewing any rich person from a particular country, in this case Russia, as being somehow corrupt because they've got money? There becomes a bit of a red under the bed feel with some of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that we're firstly not vindictive towards all Russians, and secondly not vindictive to anyone who happens to have made money. But the question we always need to ask ourselves is, where did that money come from? How did you earn that money? And there's a difference between investing 10, 15, 20 million in property in the UK and then not living in the property, and investing 10, 15, 20 million in industry in the north of England, for example. So we just always have to ask ourselves the question, where did the money come from? How did you earn that money? Is it legitimate?
I feel, and I don't know about anyone listening feeling the same, but I feel like my security is at risk from violence on the streets, terrorism broadly, and unfortunately now state war. I don't feel that my security is really risked by a very rich, corrupt oligarch investing in property in London.
And therein lies the problem. If you have sitting there as the government with a pot of money and you need to decide whether to spend that on counter-terrorism or on investigating for years and years, because these are not short cases, dirty money, then of course we know where the money is going to go. But this is why, I mean, last year the government itself recognised that dirty money was a threat to national security. What we now need to see the government
because it allows the country to be beholden to people.
Correct. It buys influence. It at worst undermines democracy. I mean, I'm sure Jameson will have a view of this, but the United States has had a big argument during the Trump era about what is money doing to the sort of the democracy of the United States. We should care about the same here in the UK.
Tom Keating is Director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Studies at Royal United Services Institute. Jameson Firestone co-founded the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign and is now a sanctions lawyer for Alexei Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation. I think for a lot of us, it is something that we've heard about, perhaps talked about before, but this is now really come to the surface, given everything that we're seeing in Ukraine. If you have a question about what the British government is doing, what it could do, what it's not quite doing at the moment, and who it should be going after, now's your chance. 0345 6060 973 84850 to text. You can tweet at LBC. We'll come to your calls, your questions and your thoughts about what the government is doing, why it can't go further, and whether Boris Johnson is actually right to say the UK is leading the world in this regard. I think when the EU are saying to Britain, come on, you need to go further, it's very hard to justify the idea that we are leading the world on this. Come to your thoughts in a few moments. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC. It's 4:15. News headlines now. Amelia Cox.
Negotiations have resumed between delegates from Ukraine and Russia in Belarus. There are fears of a humanitarian disaster in the city of Mariupol, which has experienced heavy shelling for almost 2 days. Following a phone call with Vladimir Putin, the French president has warned its Russian counterpart wants to take all of Ukraine. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England, a low of 1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. In London, 7 tube lines are suspended because of the strike. There is a reduced service running on parts of the Central District, Northern and Piccadilly lines, but no services are running through central London. There's also no Docklands Light Railway between Shadwell and Bank. Great Northern are running any trains between Moorgate and Finsbury Park. On the roads, there are delays in Essex on the M11 northbound. There's a lane closed because of an accident between junction 7 Harlow and 8 for Bishop Stortford. There are also queues in Kent on the M25 anti-clockwise. It's partly blocked approaching the Dartford Tunnel. That's because of an accident. And it's very slow in Derbyshire on the M1 going northbound. 2 lanes are shut because of an accident between junction 25 for Nottingham and junction 26 for Eastwood.
This is LBC.
Unlike most networks, Tesco mobile prices stay fixed throughout your contract. You could say they're as frozen as LPs. Get the amazing Samsung Galaxy S21 FE 5G with 6 gigs of data for just £24.99 a month with club card prices, saving you £180. This is Supermarket Mobile. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 30th of March. Was £29.99. Saving £5 monthly. Club card. 36-month credit and rolling monthly use agreements required. 5G subject to coverage. Terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
This is LBC.
Tado, when you hit your home, control your central heating from your smartphone. Tado helps you save energy. Choose the room temperature you want it to be. Intelligent climate control for your home. Control your central heating from your smartphone. Tado.
Your home, your comfort zone. Tado, smart thermostats to help you save energy. Visit tado.com. Tado. German engineered.
We all have a fire inside us. It gives us energy and spirit to do the things we love. Every morning we get to feed that fire and set ourselves up for the day with a warming and satisfying bowl of Quaker oats. Because when we feed it right, when it's fully ablaze, we can take on anything the day might bring.
Don't tell me this is often done.
Feed more than just your body. Feed the fire inside. Quaker Oats.
Leaving a gift in your will to Cancer Research UK is a pledge. Pledges like these fund a third of our research and help secure this life-saving work for future generations. Use Cancer Research UK's free will service where our expert legal partners can guide you through writing or updating your will. Call 0300 123 7733 or visit cruk.org/free will service, and together we will beat cancer. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
It's late Saturday evening. You're comfortable. Spontaneous movie night marathon comfortable. You check the cupboards for snacks, only to find nothing. You can't go out. You're in rabbit slippers. So it's a good thing Zap delivers in minutes, 24/7. Craving popcorn, tasty beverages, 6 flavours of ice cream, 'cause why choose one? For your next movie night, treat yourself to a bit of this. And this. Want it? Zap it. Download now and see if Zap delivers in your area.
Meet Sarah from WG for Business, the business supplies and facilities people.
You've heard how we can save you money on your business supplies. Here's how we do it. Consolidate your business services and supply spend with WG for Business, and you will save. Not might or could, you will, because that's what we do.
WG for Business, saving your business.
Text Sarah to 88802.
3 months invoice audit and conditions apply. Get price guarantee at wgforbusiness.com.
Whether you're searching for record players or pianos, how you pay matters. Visa helps protect you from payment fraud online.
The guy at the front of this
Visa,
thinks when he
a
looks in his
network
mirror
working for everyone.
and sees this half-mile-long snake
Tom
of cars
Swarbrick
behind
on
him.
LBC.
With Motorway, sell your car quickly, easily and conveniently from home for free.
Afternoon to you, 4:20 is the time. Tom Swarbrick in for Eddie Mayer here on LBC. The government has got itself into a right old mess on the sanctions that they were hoping to bring in on some of the Russian oligarchs. Turns out that having announced sanctions, they aren't very effective because there are concerns about the case that is being built, or lack of a case that is built, to connect some of the Russian oligarchs to Vladimir Putin. And at the moment, the government is having a bit of an internal row, which is spilling out into the public about what to do about it. Should they bring in emergency legislation to go round what is currently in place? And I think it is a perfectly legitimate question to ask, well, given that Brexit allowed us to be in full control of our sanctions regimes, Why was this not anticipated, given that we knew that a Russian invasion was likely? We've been told by the very same government that there was a very good chance that Putin would go into Russia. Well, if one of the consequences of that was going to be sanctions, why didn't the government foresee this? We'll come on to your calls and questions. We're joined this hour by Jameson Firestone, who's the co-founder of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign, and Tom Keating is with us too, Director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Studies at the Royal United Services Institute. Jameson, just very briefly before I come to Richard in Maidstone, can you give us a sense of what it is the government is trying to do and why they've come up against these problems?
Okay, so what the government is trying to do is create some advocacy for an end to this war. And what the government is doing is it's going after, or it's supposed to be going after, Russia's richest and most influential people who make their money dealing with the Russian government and supporting the Russian government, but who live here or who park their families here. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're going to sanction Russia and cause financial pain, it doesn't make a lot of sense to allow the richest and most influential people to miss that pain and sit pretty here in London, right? So the government wants to freeze their stuff and send them and their families home. It's not working because the legislation we have, which was just modified, is inadequate to the task, apparently. The government is saying that under the new legislation, modified as of 2 weeks ago, that they still don't have enough legal grounds, which contrasts very sharply with the EU that does have the legal grounds and is seizing oligarchs' yachts. They've already seized 2 of them.
Yeah, quite. Tom, so I can understand, so talk to me like I'm an 8-year-old. What is the difference between what the UK's got and can't, make happen, and what the EU's got so that they can?
It's really interesting because when the UK left the EU, we had to define our own sanctions rules. We weren't following the laws of the EU anymore.
One of the benefits.
One of the benefits, we were told, indeed. Interestingly, when that happened, there were a few people who were sanctioned when we were part of the EU who actually came off the list when we came out of the EU. Now, what that tells you is that the legal standard in the UK seems to be higher than in the EU. So we would argue, of course, we're applying a higher legal standard. The result is, as Jameson has said, we can't actually use this law, even though we wrote it ourselves just 2 weeks ago.
Just before I come to Richard, is it not quite a good thing that it is hard for the state to, of their own accord, remove private property from any particular individual?
It is, absolutely, and I think we need to be careful not to sort of start just grabbing property from anybody whenever we feel like it. I think the issue we have here is we face a war in Ukraine on the border of Europe, and we in the UK at the moment are unable to act on a particular plank of the response, which our allies are also pursuing very aggressively.
Let's come to questions and thoughts. Richard's in Maidstone. You've been waiting patiently, Richard. Hi.
Yes, good afternoon. A quick question. If you serve a unexplained wealth order on a person of interest, do they have to answer it? If not, can you go straight to asset confiscation? And if that is the case, why have we not served one since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister?
Tom, do you want to start with that one?
Well, Richard's gone straight to the heart of the legal matter with his question. Unexplained wealth orders. Very, very briefly, the police, law enforcement have the right to give certain people this order and say, explain where the money came from by which you own that property. Unfortunately, another example of the law not working as expected, they're not as easy to use as we anticipated, and law enforcement has run into real problems using those, and in fact lost a very high-profile case 2 or 3 years ago. So law enforcement is burnt, but there's a really important point in all of this, which is quite often the people we serve these orders against have more money, believe it or not, to spend on lawyers than the United Kingdom government.
No.
Absolutely, and indeed
they've got more money to spend.
They have, and Dame Lynn Owens told the Intelligence and Security Committee in the famous Russia report that the Johnson government sat on, she made it very clear that she has to think very carefully about mounting one of these attacks for one of these unexplained wealth orders, because essentially in a financial gunfight between lawyers, the other side has more money and would win.
Isn't that seems to be part of the problem here too, Jameson, that the lawyers are concerned about pushback if they were to sanction some of these Russian oligarchs without apparently having built enough of a link between them and Putin?
A problem, but let me make this a bit simpler. We're basically at war. we're not in a shooting war because we know if we get in a shooting war, we're in World War III. But we all feel we'd like to be doing the maximum. And so what we're trying to do here is say, there are people who own the biggest companies in Russia, the companies that support the Russian government, that are producing the metals, the oil, the gas, everything that makes that economy work. And they're living here. And they're owning stuff here. Now, could you imagine in World War II us not sending these people back to Germany? Could you imagine? These are people who sit here and they say war is bad. Oh, they're against the war. What are you for the environment or against the environment? Find me somebody who's for war. They're not saying they're anti-Putin. They're making billions of dollars even today, and they're supporting the Russian government, and they're living here. And so what we really need to be doing is just looking at these people. They're easily identifiable. We can figure out who own the biggest companies and who's most politically connected, and then we can just be selective. We can send them all home, or we can send the ones home that are linked to corruption. But there's something wrong about them being able to stay here and their companies financing and making this war possible.
Is it not right, though, that a government who seeks to do that has to build a legally relatively tight case against those people in order to do that, to strip them of their property, to kick them out of the country, to boot their children out of the most expensive private
crossroads?
It's not hard to figure out who owns what. So the problem that our law has right now is that our law basically says if you control one of these companies, we can get you, right? But that's maybe too high a bar. If you own 25 plus 1%, that gives you a lot of rights on these things. And if you sit down at the table with Vladimir Putin, that means you're a person of importance. So the problem is that our law has to kind of be rewritten to take that into account. And you can freeze their stuff and boot them out of the country until the war is over. You're able to take their stuff, freeze it, goodbye. By the way, visas are easy to do. You just tell somebody you're not desirable at this time, and let them go lobby for Putin pulling out of the war.
I think there's an important point here, which is that we don't have many vectors to put pressure on Vladimir Putin to try and change his calculus. And I'm not suggesting that by putting pressure on these oligarchs, we're going to change Vladimir Putin's calculus, but it is one of the vectors that we have. If people close to Putin realize that it is not of benefit, it is a curse, then maybe they have access to him to perhaps talk to him to change his mind. We have to go after these people. We have to put pressure on them because they are one of the few routes we have to the heart of power in Russia.
Paul is in Willesden. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Tom. Long time no hear. Nice talking to you. I remember the last time we spoke, we did mention Nuneaton. You totally threw it out the window. But as I was saying, I was going to say, the question I wanted to ask is the sanction. Right? I can hear everybody trying to tick boxes. But at the end of the day, I think Putin is sanction-proof. I think this is a very he's done this very well planned. He knew this was coming a long time ago. But there is something I have noticed though. Is it not possible? Because I can see it's happening now. I think where the Russian people, even the soldiers, who might not end up getting paid after a period of time, people are going to go hungry. And obviously Putin's got alliances elsewhere like China.
So Paul, what's the thing that's going to come to remove his bulletproofness?
Right, so basically, there's sometimes a way you can work on people's friends. So like, for example,
it's going to bring pressure. It's going to be these sanctions.
Basically, if we tried to bring China over to our side for a change, instead of alienating them all the time, right, and giving them something they want, right, just to say, look, you know what, you can see there's a madman at the other end. And to be honest with you, right, I'm in my bones, and I've had it right so far over the last 6 months because I have watched this coming and I saw this coming. I will honestly say to you that doesn't matter what you guys do or try to do, Putin's already hell-bent on going gun-ho.
Tom, quick word on that.
Yeah, I mean, Paul makes an important point, which is that we're going to need countries like China at some point to, if you like, intermediate in all of this. And that's one of the reasons why at the moment I think sanctions are not sort of focusing on the nexus between Russia and China. We want to keep China on side. We're probably not going to fix this ourselves. So yeah, let's not antagonize places like China at a time when, frankly, we need all the coordination and collaboration around the world we can get.
Tom Keating, you're Director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Studies at Russi Jameson Firestone, joins us as well, co-founder of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign. More of your calls and questions after the news headlines at 4:30 on LBC from Amelia Cox.
Kiev is calling for an immediate ceasefire during negotiations with Russian delegates, which have resumed in Belarus. Heavy shelling is continuing on a number of key cities as the war enters its second week. There are fears of a humanitarian disaster in Mariupol, where water, electricity and heating has been cut off. Moscow claims it has taken over its first city in Ukraine, with the administrative building in Kherson captured. Ukrainian forces are fighting Russian troops for control of Enerhoda, which is Europe's largest nuclear plant. During a phone call this afternoon, French President Emmanuel Macron has told Vladimir Putin he's making a serious mistake. LBC weather: overcast with outbreaks of rain in the north and west, drier and brighter in Northern Ireland and southeast England, a high of 13 degrees.
LBC. Good evening and welcome. This is Andrew Marr. Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC. I was looking for a place where I could speak frankly. That's LBC. I was looking for somewhere that is fast-moving, exciting, fresh. That's LBC. Tonight with Andrew Marr. This is a new kind of show. I want to call things out. If someone is lying, I want to say that they're lying. Starts this Monday. 6 p.m. is more or less the perfect time. LBC is now the only place to go. Tonight with Andrew Marr. Starts this Monday from 6 p.m. Listen on your radio and watch on Global Play. LBC.
Introducing Cheese, the digital bank that makes every day rewarding.
Well, hang about, what does that mean?
Well, you get 1% cash back on your everyday debit card spending.
Like on my travel?
Yes.
On my decaf frappa skinny latte?
Well, sure, whatever that is.
Cash back on this dress?
Absolutely.
And what about dinner?
By all means.
And a drink afterwards?
It would be rude not to.
And my cab home?
Allow me. Get 1% cash back. Say hello to rewarding banking. Chase. Search Chase Bank.
18 plus UK residents. Cashback exceptions apply. Available for the first 12 months.
Save on that big bathroom refit with this TradePoint member exclusive offer. We've 10% off all bathrooms when you spend £250 on a bathroom. Plus, if you loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. Find us at B&Q or at tradepoint.co.uk. Excludes installation services. It's 24th of March. Subject to availability. See tradepoint.co.uk.
It doesn't matter which energy supplier you're with. Everyone's feeling the pressure right now. And if you're struggling with your energy bills, the British Gas Energy Trust is here. With independent financial advice and support. We've supported over 500,000 people since 2004. So whoever supplies your energy, if you need to talk, we're here for you. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Energy Trust. Subject to eligibility.
How could UU lower your carbon footprint?
You could turn your heating down 3 degrees and wear your UU bottle.
UU. Go to uubottle.com.
Leaving a gift in your will to Cancer Research UK is a pledge. Pledges like these fund a third of our research and help secure this life-saving work for future generations. Use Cancer Research UK's free will service where our expert legal partners can guide you through writing or updating your will. Call 0300 123 7733 or visit cruk.org/freewillservice and together we will beat cancer. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
Okay, you lot, ready with the cement?
Oi, Ben, your QuickBooks team here. Making tax digital is coming.
We heard you might be worried about getting stuck with your VAT returns. But our award-winning customer support means you can rely on real help from a real human.
Aye, handy.
So you can get back to turning concrete into cash.
Make tax digital with QuickBooks.
Never without your bag for life? Locally grown veggies on the dinner table? Or always recycle your plastic waste? You already go the extra mile for the environment. Now your savings can make a difference too. With NS&I Green Savings Bonds, you can save up to £100,000 and help to make the environment greener, cleaner and more sustainable. Save today at nsni.com.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
With Motorway, offering free home collection when selling your car.
The government's rhetoric on the sanctions it wishes to apply to some of the Russian oligarchs isn't quite matching the reality right now, not least because the sanctions are not having an effect on those Russian oligarchs, because there is a legal row going on in government about how to link those oligarchs with Putin's regime. We'll come to your calls and your questions on that in just a few moments. Let's bring you right up to speed with everything that has happened this afternoon regarding the war in Ukraine. I'm afraid there are southern cities in parts of the country that are falling into Russian hands almost as we speak. Reporting live for LBC, Phil McDonald.
Yes, Tom, well, after days of resistance, Russia appears to have taken its first city as part of its invasion of Ukraine. The mayor of Kherson, a major port city in the south of the country, says troops are now on the streets and have forced their way into the council building. But Ukraine's president has denied that the city has fallen, insisting that they're still fighting. So mixed reports on this. But Zainish Hussein, who is in the city, says he and his family are now living under a curfew.
You're not supposed to go out after 6 o'clock. You cannot have a gathering of more than 3 people together. You are supposed to drive at the minimal speed. So life is getting normal a bit that way, but the city is definitely under Russian control. There is no Ukrainian control here.
Come on, we can all fucking fit through both ways.
We're now a week into the fighting, and the United Nations says 1 million people have now fled Ukraine since the invasion began. They think eventually 4 million Ukrainians will leave their homes, which is about 10% of the population. They say it's the swiftest exodus of refugees this century. Now, Anna has just made it across the border to Poland after leaving Kyiv. It took her 2 days, and she says the situation getting on trains was desperate.
People became like animals. Like it's exhausting, and it's really crazy. To be honest, we're very lucky. I heard some stories like people stay on a borderline for 9 days.
Now, there's been more heavy shelling in Ukraine and in the capital of Kyiv. At least 22 civilians have also been killed in an airstrike on the northern city of Chernihiv. Thousands of people have been seeking safety in underground shelters across the country, including Sofia.
I'm on the subway now, and it's terrible. How many kids are there? We won't live as independent, normal country. I hope all this violence and cruelness.
Now, we've seen a major U-turn on Russia and Belarus competing in the upcoming Winter Paralympics. Athletes are now going to be banned from the Games, which get underway tomorrow. Yesterday, bosses said they would be able to take part, but under a neutral flag. Now, efforts to bring about peace in Ukraine continue, but nothing appears to have changed. It's understood that Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke to his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron earlier, insisting that the military operation is going to plan. But during the call, Mr. Macron told Mr. Putin that he was deluding himself. Meanwhile, medical aid has left London for Ukraine today, and the Disasters Emergency Committee is raising money for food, water and blankets. And just to finish, some major developments in the last hour that will put pressure on Vladimir Putin, as Russian oil giant Lukoil has called for an end to the war, and Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs has said that the country, along with 45 states, has launched the OSCE Moscow mechanism to hold Russia accountable for what it's calling war crimes and crimes against humanity. Tom.
Phil, thank you very much indeed. Let's just pick up on that news about Lukoil, the Russian oil giant calling for a halt to the war in Ukraine. Jameson Firestone is with us, co-founder of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign. Can you tell us a bit more about this Russian oil giant and how significant or not their calls to the ending of the war in Ukraine might be?
Well, look, it's great that they're calling for peace, but it's only the beginning again. I think that right now, the important thing is to build up momentum within Russia, which I believe, unfortunately, I believe it's sanctions that's building up the momentum and not great humanitarian concern. I think people are voting with their wallets now. So good. I hope that more people, more companies like Lukoil go. But when you look at what's going on in Russia right now, I just heard IKEA is pulling out of Russia. It's toxic. Nobody. So Russian oil companies and Russian companies understand that they're basically like Iranian companies at this point. So great calling for peace, but we need more than that.
I did see a clip. I don't know how accurate it is, but I saw a translation of the clip of a Russian business commentator breaking out a bottle, saluting the Russian stock market, and basically saying it was nice to know you. Given that I don't know that it's even opened. It's been 4 days or so. Richard, let's come to your call. You're in Midhurst in West Sussex. Hi, Richard.
Hi, good afternoon, Tom. My question is, there are some oligarchs that Putin wants to get his hands on, and what is happening with those oligarchs that have taken money from Russia that Putin wants to get, not that we want to get, that Putin wants to get. Are they going to have to go back?
Tom, do you know about who these oligarchs might be that Putin wants to get?
I'm not exactly sure who he's referring to. Obviously, there are people, rich people, who came from Russia to the UK to try and get beyond the reach of Vladimir Putin. Of course, we know that it's very hard to get beyond his reach. We've seen poisonings on the streets of the UK. But I think there's also another important point here, which is that many of these individuals are kind of guardians of Putin's wealth. They are wealthy at his sort of behest, and so they. Is it
his money? They're wealthy with his money, that there is sort of, conduit for him to spend his money.
Yeah, there are certainly people who are well known for, as I say, being kind of cutouts, fronts for his money, and there is kind of a pact between them and Putin. You can be wealthy, keep out of politics, keep out of my way in Russia, and I'll let you enjoy your wealth. And by the way, at some point I might ring you up and say, I'm calling in that money that you have.
Can I ask you, Jameson, about whether there is any suggestion or any truth to the suggestions that some of these very rich oligarchs who perhaps want to get out of Russia might be being used as back channels between various governments and the Russian government in order to get a message back to Vladimir Putin?
I find it very difficult to believe that we need any back channels right now. I mean, this is a very, very public thing, and we've been. What need is there for a back channel? Essentially, we have a country that is being attacked and occupied.
But not right now. I mean, not necessarily right now, but historically, would there have been, and perhaps part of the reason that explains why certain people weren't gone after with greater vim and vigor, is perhaps they could be quite useful to various governments, including the British government, to get messages to various people.
I don't think that's what's going on here. I think what's going on here is these people have a lot of money, and everybody's drinking from the trough, and they make, when they eventually become citizens, they make nice contributions to the Tory party, and everybody's been happy with that up to now.
And because the Conservative Party say that these people are British citizens and therefore have a right to be involved in politics in the same way that any other British citizen would, you're not buying it.
Well, what I'm buying is you have a right to be involved in politics, and we have a right to be suspicious about where your money comes from. So great. I mean, first of all, most of these people aren't British citizens yet. Most of these people are living here on golden visas and have residency, and we have to look at where people's money comes from. If all of your source of wealth is dependent on Vladimir Putin, right? Then when you're talking to the British government about what it should do and what's in its best interest, so is that really what's in our best interest, or is that what's in your best interest?
Tom?
Really important point about golden visas. Many of these people have essentially bought their residency in the UK, and by the way, it only costs £2 million, so for them that's a pocket change.
Is that like sorry to interrupt, is that like a thing? Is there somewhere on the Home Office website where it says, hello, you can go bronze, silver or gold will cost you £2 million, oh, you happen to be a Russian oligarch?
Yeah, absolutely, and the more you pay, the faster you will get your citizenship. So this is a thing. Wow. And it's not just a thing in the UK, it's a thing in Cyprus, in Malta, in Portugal. I mean, this is a doorway into the European Union, into the
But are we that impoverished as a nation that we could really do with the £2 million from the Russian oligarch to give them golden-plated citizenship? I mean, it just seems a really small sum of money in the grand scheme of things, and a real voiding of any morality.
It's a classic example of something that was set up back in the 90s with all good intentions, and then smart people, lawyers, specialist companies have figured out how to make the most of this for these kinds of individuals. I mean, these should have been shut down years ago, but they have continued to exist.
Even if there's an argument back that says, well, you need to prove that the person who's using their money to buy the golden citizenship ticket, that money is ill-gotten. And until that point is proven, they are, like everybody else, innocent.
But this is the problem. We weren't checking. There was this period that some refer to as the blind faith period. If you rocked up with enough money, you're welcome.
Wow. Extraordinary. Tom Keating, Director of Centre for Finance, Crime and Security Studies. Jameson Firestone with us as well. More of your questions to come. It's 4:45 on LBC. News headlines now. Amelia Cox.
A number of key cities in Ukraine remain under attack as negotiations between Kiev and Moscow resume. Officials in the port of Mariupol warn they're being destroyed following almost 2 days of heavy shelling. Ukrainian forces are battling Russian troops for control of Enerhoda, which has Europe's largest nuclear plant. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England tonight, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. A low of 1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. Because of the tube strike in London, 7 lines are suspended. There is a reduced service running on parts of the Central, District, Northern and Piccadilly lines, but no services are running through Central London. There's also no service on the Docklands Light Railway between Shadwell and Bank. On the roads in Essex, there are queues on the M11 northbound. That's because of an accident. There's now on the hard shoulder between Junction 7 for Harlow and Junction 8 for Bishop Stortford. There are long delays in Derbyshire on the M1 northbound. 2 lanes are closed because of an accident between Junction 25 for Nottingham and Junction 26 for Eastwood. And they're accusing Greater Manchester on the M60 clockwise after a police investigation earlier on at Junction 23 for Ashton and Deline.
This is LBC.
So, you offer rewards, give extra time to pay suppliers, and you even have retail discounts. Yes, it's a rather impressive CV, Mr.
Card. It's Mr. Card.
Ah, yes, you are a card, aren't you?
An Amex Business Gold Card, to be specific, Mum.
The job's yours.
Thanks.
The American Express Business Gold Card. The card that works harder for your business. Search Amex Business Gold.
Terms apply. 18 plus, subject to approval. No annual fee in first year. £175 thereafter. Basic card also available with no annual fee or benefits.
This is LBC.
At Sainsbury's, we've dropped the prices of hundreds of products. Like buy Sainsbury's British King Edward potatoes. We're £1.75, now £1.50 for 2 kilograms. And taste the difference. Wiltshire unsmoked bacon was £2.75, now £2.40 for 240 grams. Sainsbury's. Subject to availability, excludes locals, number of products varies by store.
Save on that big bathroom refit with this TradePoint member exclusive offer. We've 10% off all bathrooms when you spend £250 on a bathroom. Plus, if you loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. Find us at B&Q or at tradepoint.co.uk. Excludes installation services as 24th of March. Subject to availability, see tradepoint.co.uk.
It feels so good knowing Pension Bee combined your old pensions into a simple online plan. Pension Bee. Be pension confident.
Authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Capital at risk.
Money. A subject some people can't get enough of. But what is enough money? Enough for now or enough for your future? Welcome to NetWealth, the wealth management company who decided enough is enough. That you shouldn't be talking to advisors who are just good enough. You should be talking to experts who combine wealth management with the latest technology and much lower fees than you might expect. To find out more, visit netwealth.com. For wealth management, as it should be, when investing your capital is at risk.
It was the worst day of Fiona Simpson's professional life.
It really wasn't that bad.
The heavens poured.
It was a light drizzle.
And Fiona had a virtual sales pitch with the devil.
It was with Neville, our client. We're with BT, so our connection didn't play up.
Way to ruin a story, Fiona.
Cut the drama with BT's Always Connected guarantee. So it's all business,
no drama.
Search BT Business to find out more. BT, beyond limits. T's and C's apply. 89% UK availability. 4G coverage required.
Not all stories online can be trusted. Some are designed to reel you in with misleading facts, extreme opinions, or even outright lies. So, before you share a story with friends or family online, check. Are there spelling errors? Do images or videos look edited? Do the facts seem believable? Do they come from reliable sources? Don't get caught by false information. Take care with what you share. Visit sharechecklist.gov.uk to find out more.
Big changes. Funny how they usually start small.
Like when McDonald's started sourcing from the nation's beef farmers, like me.
And egg farmers.
And potato farmers.
But that isn't all. They're helping invest in new technology as well.
So we're fit for a more sustainable future.
Before you know it, they've invested millions of pounds in British and Irish farms. And what started small just turned into something much bigger. McDonald's. Change a little, change a lot.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
With Motorway, where dealers compete to give you the best price for your car.
Back to your calls and questions in a moment. If you live in this city, in the City of London, you you won't have failed to have noticed the fact that for a second day this week, tube workers have staged a walkout, meaning millions of Londoners have been struggling big time to get anywhere. Reporting it for LBC Live from Hammersmith Station, Charlotte Lynch.
Well, Tom, this is a huge, busy station on the best of days. Queues aren't too rare of a sight, but today it's absolutely packed, particularly the bus station. People are trying to cram onto these buses that are mainly full already because, of course, they can't get the underground. I can see the huge metal gates of the underground entrance are chained, closed. Nobody can get in there. Instead, everyone is being forced to take the bus. Some of them, though, are so full they're just driving straight past and they can't let people on because they're just too busy. So these people are left waiting and the queue gets bigger. These people have been caught up in the chaos.
Very rarely ever come into London, so it really threw me this morning.
Gosh, I bet.
So I've been playing around with buses all day. I had an appointment and I was about 45 minutes late. So I'm now going to try and make my way back.
And they're all pretty packed as well, aren't they?
Like, every time you stop, I mean, some of them, they just weren't opening the doors.
I was due to late to my appointment for doing my passport. Yeah, so now I'm trying to grab an Uber or, you know, to get back home.
I'm not actually normally from London, so I come up like the day and, yeah, it's been a bit of a nightmare, really.
Wasn't for the TfL overground, it would have been an absolute nightmare. But that, we managed to make it work without too much disruption. But obviously it's extra busy because there is no underground. We travelled this morning at about 10:30 and the overground was like rush hour. So I presume it's been like that for most of the day through all the transport services still running.
And this isn't even peak evening rush hour yet. Those people, some of them, they're enjoying days out. We're yet to get the wave of commuters heading home from offices here, all coming back from the city centre, if they indeed braved the journey into work. There's usually 4 tube lines operating from here. There is just 1 district line train running every half an hour, but that's your lot. The London Mayor City car.
Oh, Charlotte, we lost you just as you were coming to the London Mayor's City Car. Listen, we'll have more from Charlotte throughout the course of the show as people try and make that journey back out from work and back home again in a city that has largely been left at a standstill by that second day of tube strike. Charlotte, thank you. LBC reporter Charlotte Lynch. Let's come back to your questions on the sanctions, whether the government rhetoric is actually matching the reality. Question here from Mark on Twitter. Tom, the Russian millions, it's got more to do with the city of London than the government. They're just the ones with their snouts in the trough. To what extent, Tom, has this got more to do with the City of London than the government?
I guess this is where I have to come clean and say I worked in the city for 20 years, and indeed, in my last year in the bank, one of my clients was the Central Bank of Russia, so I know a bit about this. Look, I think it's a popular conspiracy theory that the City of London floats on dirty money. I'm sure there are some rotten apples, but to be honest, in my 20 years I worked in this world, you know, I never came across the sort of activity that might support this kind of conspiracy. That being said, it's important to note that, you know, we all spent many years working with banks in Russia, working with individuals in Russia. There are private bankers across London and places like Switzerland who manage money for these people. So these individuals also now need to be standing up and taking the action to freeze assets when names are published, providing information perhaps even to the authorities as to where money is, because one of the things we know at the moment is these individuals are trying to move their money beyond the reach of the authorities in Europe and the US. So you know, I think the city, I hope, will be leaning in and supporting what's going on as much as anyone else.
Jameson, can I put this to you from Chris here? Is it easier to grab a non-fixed asset like a yacht or a car or a plane than it is to seize property or companies? Chris says, I'm assuming cash and bank accounts are nearly impossible.
Well, actually, it's kind of look. It's the other way around. I mean, boats move, planes move, money moves, right? So there are lots of people right now. I assure you, there are lots of oligarchs sitting here in London right now moving their money as quickly as they can. But the problem is, where do they move it? You see, right now, pretty much if you send currency into Russia, it's a one-way trip because all of the currency is now frozen because we've frozen the reserves of Russia. You can't send it to the EU because they're sanctioning faster than we are. You don't want to send it to the US. So unless you go to some really shady place, right? And even you got to be really shady right now to open up new accounts for anybody connected with Russia doing this. So I would say this.
Well, I see that the Eritreans voted on the UN Security Council to not condemn Russia. So maybe there's a couple of banks in Eritrea that are about to get full.
Right. I think that's a safe place to put your money. Yeah, you know. Right. So obviously things like property are the easiest to seize because it can't move, and even if you want to sell your house tomorrow, it's hard to sell a house tomorrow, right? And the things that are more difficult are just, it's not difficult to seize money. It's difficult if that's quickly to get it.
Can I ask you, Jameson, just about the Russian economy right now, and what it is, how you would describe it, what effect the freezing of assets is having on the Russian economy? We hear about runs on the banks, we hear about ATMs drying up. What have you seen?
All right, well, look, the Russian stock market is closed and not trading. Currency is not trading. You can't send money out of the country. Everything's kind of frozen right now because they had panic, and they understand. And they understand that the second they take their foot off the gas, they're going to have panic again. But I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea that the economy is going to crash and burn and Putin's going to run out of money, because Putin gets a lot of money because Europe buys his energy. So what we've done to Russia is a little bit like saying to Saudi Arabia, look, we're not going to buy anything from you anymore except oil. Right? So what we're doing is very serious, but Putin is going to be able to continue to float that government for a while. What he's going to have a very hard time doing, if we keep this like this for months or for years, is he's not going to be able to afford the ongoing occupation of Ukraine and keep his government afloat at the same time.
So it is a race here. It's really a race between how the money running out and the war being won.
Well, the war is never going to be won. The war is going to be, it's going to be their own Iraq, where they went in on day one, the population hated them. So this is, I mean, look, we're all hoping that all these sanctions and all this other stuff, maybe somebody will tell Putin to pull back, right? Or maybe somebody will be a death of Stalin and somebody will, knock the guy off. But let's be realistic. There's a little chance of that happening. So what we're probably going to get into is a many years thing where we're slowly starving Russia while they're spending all this money to try and oppress Ukraine until Putin's regime fails.
Can I bring closer to home and ask you, Tom, about what Liz Truss has been saying regarding the UK sanctions? She's talked about, and this is again where maybe the rhetoric isn't matching the reality, the sanctions team in the Foreign Office having tripled the number of people.
Sanctions is a specialist topic. Lawyers like Jameson and others are the ones who really are experts. You can't breed sanctions experts overnight. So as I understand it, the tripling of people working in the sanctions unit in the Foreign Office is really a tripling of the number of people in the unit. But whether that's actually going to lead to clearing this issue, I mean, ultimately the issue is a legal issue, and no number of people are going to clear that issue. And I think, go back to something that we said earlier, we have the right to make our own laws. So let's fix the laws and get on with the sanctioning that the EU and the US are leading the way on.
Because at the moment, you could paint a picture of saying Ukraine is being bombed to destruction. People are dying left, right and centre. And the tool that the UK, one of the tools that the UK has, the sanctions regime, is actually being held up by pointy-nosed, pointy-chinned lawyers scratching their chins and saying, sorry, no can do.
Yeah, I mean, look, sanction and be damned, right? If we think that the law doesn't quite work, either fix the law or issue the sanctions, because once those names go out there, then the banks and others can start to take action. It's completely inappropriate. It's not acceptable for people to be dying in Ukraine while lawyers are nickeling and diming over paragraph 3, subsection 4.
Jameson, how quickly can it be fixed?
It's about 5 minutes, I think. I mean, you could just go out there and you could change the law. You could say if you own more than 25% of a Russian company important to the Russian government, we can sanction you. If you're part of the Russian government, we can sanction you. If you're part of the Russian parliament, we can sanction you. 3 quick changes, right? And then all of a sudden we can do what we want.
And the reason why it seems the UK either hasn't anticipated that or hasn't got to that point yet is, in your view, Jameson,
Right.
They thought they did it 2 weeks ago and it wasn't enough, and now they're finding out that the law that they created has loopholes and doesn't allow them to do what they want to do. And Tom's correct, we have to change the law quickly, sanction first, and work it out later.
So what could...
You struggle to watch my glasses on that bag, don't break them.
Okay. Whoa. Full on.
It's big, isn't it?
Yeah, I really. It's basically a normal car but bigger.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a normal car in the inside.
Probably. You know you've upset it because you were pushing it.
Oh.
And that there, if the car breaks down and I have to wait for the recovery to come and get me, I have to put that cover on the car so nobody can see it.
But why can't people see it?
Because the company don't want people to see it yet, because you can't buy them and no one's seen them yet. That's why it's got all this cover on it.
Ow.
All this black and white stuff.
No one's wanting it.
You could just tell it to close.
Close.
Open the door. No, the door's fine. This one does.
Open. Nana! Look! Look! Close! I want to see your work in this car.
You see what?
Your work. This one.
Yeah. Just started. See you later then.
Down in the south, which I think people should have their eye on. People have been looking mostly at the Snake Column, and I do want to come back to that because there are important things to say about that today, is that there is the prospect of a major amphibious attack from the Black Sea. Now, it is a fact that the Russian Navy has got the ships and it has the naval infantry on board to launch an amphibious attack, which, if it were to be successful, could surround and capture Odessa. But there's a very big caveat here, because amphibious operations are the most complex conventional operations. They're highly risky. Just remember D-Day. And so if you make a comparison, say, with 3 Commando Brigade of the Royal Marines, or the United States Marine Corps, who are the world's 2 premier amphibious attack units, the Russian forces that are down there are poorly equipped, they're poorly trained in comparison, and they will be opposed by the Ukrainians, whose morale is rising in combat.
Let me ask you just very quickly, I'm afraid, Professor, about that column, massive column of Russian artillery. It seems to be moving very slowly, held back by, we're told, a combination of Ukrainian insurgents and mechanical failure.
Well, I think it's a bit more than that, quite honestly. It's made minimal progress in the last 72 hours. This column, it's a major logistical and planning failure. That's already clear. It's canalized in very difficult roads. Can't get out of that. The command and control, we have now learned, is breaking down. The officers are resorting to open communications, and we know from those that many officers have been actually abandoning them sitting in the trucks in the convoy. Why? Because the Ukrainians are being very canny One of the biggest mistakes the Russians made last week was that they failed to obtain full air superiority. The Hostomel airfield, which they said they'd captured, they still haven't captured. So the Ukrainians are able to deploy aircraft and drones, and very importantly, small units of, again, those indispensable British NLAW anti-tank weapons. To put it bluntly, the prospect is beginning to rise that this armored column may well be Putin's Basra Road. If you remember the Basra Road from the Gulf,
lots of people died.
It's going to turn into a rubble heap. Now, the Ukrainians have not yet attacked all of these supply vehicles, I think for very good reason, because of course they have limited forces and they have other targets which they need to prioritize. But this thing is stuck, and it is an indication of how badly the planning for this went wrong, because what we now know, just a final point on this, is that the conscript troops who are in those northern formations were misinformed. They were tricked into going across the border. They were made to sign contracts, and then they were told to expect unopposed welcome. So the morale was low to begin with, and as always happens in combat, if morale was low to begin with, it falls, and that is what's happening. So we have much evidence of Russian soldiers who are leaving their posts, damaging their equipment, whilst on the other hand, the Ukrainian morale, which was high because their cause was just, although they are at a disadvantage in terms of mass and equipment, they are clearly fighting like tigers.
Good to speak to you, as always. Professor, thank you. Professor Gwithian Prince, fascinating, advisor to NATO and to the Ministry of Defence. Listening to that, Sir David Lidington, Chair of the Royal United Services Institute, former Deputy Prime Minister, Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice. Sir David, thank you very much for being there. The comparison is glib, I appreciate that, but do you feel, having heard from the Professor there, that this is a Russian version of Iraq?
No, I want it off.
Well, I agreed with Gwithian Prince's analysis of what's going on. No, I wouldn't put it like Iraq, because I think that what is clear about Russian tactics is that, as Professor Prince said, they're now reverting to the old playbook, which we saw as far back as Putin's crushing of the revolt in Chechnya, and the flattening of the Chechen capital of Grozny, which we saw again in the Russian complicity in the destruction of Aleppo in Syria, that this is a leader who is indifferent to the slaughter of tens of thousands of civilians if he believes that it will serve his objectives. So I am fearful that we are going to see worse in terms of civilian casualties in the days to come.
What could Western governments, British government, American, whomever, I see Macron seems to be speaking to Putin more than most,
if I do Weddy Road,
what leverage should be used to try and persuade him at this late stage still that this is a bad idea, that this shouldn't be going on any further?
I think we have to use every lever that we have
do the next urban backwards.
Be realistic about the fact that all Putin's public statements suggest that he has
McDonald's at the top of the 444, I think.
I happen to think a deluded belief, but he seems to believe that there is no such thing as Ukrainian people. Ukraine is by rights part of a Russian imperium, and that he is going to take back Ukraine and restore Russia's greatness. It's nothing to do with expansion of NATO. That was obviously a pretext from the start. Very clear now from Putin's statements about Russian expansion. But I'm pleased that President Macron does still have the channel to Putin. I think it's proved fruitless so far, as President Macron himself has briefed out this morning, but I think it's right to try to have that channel. I think that we should be looking for every opportunity to ensure that the sanctions can be made even more painful for particularly the elite around the Kremlin.
Well, let me ask you about the sanctions, because as you'll be aware, there is a row developing about the government's rhetoric and the reality of what they can actually legally do when it comes to applying sanctions to these people. And the suggestion seems to be that in 2017 or 2018, when the law was written, it was written in a way that was far too broad, and that really isn't going to do the job that it is needed to do in order to sanction these people. Do you think that that is true? And why do you think the government is in this mess it seems to be in, where the lawyers are saying we can't connect the people we'd like to sanction with the Putin regime?
Well, I haven't gone back and checked the law. I've seen some of the arguments, and I've seen that the lawyers in the House of Lords who actually proposed that amendment are very vigorously refuting the idea that wording has any impact on the government's position. I mean, it's been the case for a very long time that the British government cannot legally seize the assets of an individual or a company without giving compensation. But there is an answer to this. If there is legal uncertainty, then you have emergency primary legislation. Look, we have in the past taken through an Act of Parliament through both Commons and Lords in 48 hours, where there has been cross-party agreement. And it's pretty clear to me that in these circumstances, the opposition parties would cooperate with the government to get this through. So actually quibbling about what may have been the case with a previous Act of Parliament is neither here nor there. If the law needs changing, get it drafted, get the opposition into the room, agreed to take it forward, and that can be fast-tracked. It's been done before.
Even if it means sitting at the weekend?
Yes.
Good to speak to you.
I don't think the great majority of MPs would have the slightest objection to that.
Very good to speak to you. Sir David Lidington, thank you. Chair of the Royal United Services Institute, former Deputy Prime Minister. We'll get thoughts on what is happening in the ground in parts of Ukraine in just a few moments. Tom Swarbrick on LBC. It's 5:18. News headlines now. Amelia Cox.
Ukraine's President Zelensky has called for Vladimir Putin to meet him for talks. Negotiations have resumed between delegates from Kiev and Moscow as the conflict enters its 8th day. Heavy shelling continues in several cities, with the Kremlin claiming it's captured its first major city, Kherson. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England tonight, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England, a low of 1.
LBC travel line. Dave Goff. In London, 7 tube lines stay suspended because of the strike. There is a reduced service running on some parts of the Central District, Northern and Piccadilly lines, but no services are running through Central London. Great Northern also aren't running any trains between Moorgate and Finsbury Park. On the roads, there are long delays on the A4 going out of London. It's taking around 50 minutes to go from Knightsbridge through to the Hogarth roundabout in Chiswick. There are long delays in Derbyshire on the M1 northbound. 2 lanes are closed. That's because of an accident between junction 25 for Nottingham and junction 26 for Eastwood. And there are queues in Greater Manchester on the M6 southbound. 2 lanes remain closed at junction 26 for the M58 at Orrell. That's because a van has broken down.
This is LBC.
At Tesco Mobile, create movie magic with the incredible iPhone 13 cinematic mode. Plus, get 25 gigs of data for just £37.99 a month with club card prices, saving £126. Better yet, our prices stay fixed throughout your contract. This is Supermarket Mobile. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 30th of March. Was £41.49, saving £3.50 monthly over contract. Club card, 36-month credit and rolling monthly lease agreements required. Charges and terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
This is LBC.
The automotive industry talks a lot about zero emissions. But what does that really mean? At Volvo, we believe in zero omissions, in total transparency and honesty. If you head down to your local Volvo retailer from the 4th to the 6th of March, that's what you'll get. The unbiased truth about moving to electric. So be one of the first to test drive the new fully electric Volvo C40 Recharge or any of our other electrified models. Just book online and we'll be ready to answer your questions with zero omissions.
Zero emissions refers specifically to tailpipe emissions.
At Sainsbury's, we've dropped the prices of hundreds of products. Like buy Sainsbury's Pink Lady apples were £2.80, now just £2.50 for 6. And buy Sainsbury's Bassa fillets were £2.75, now just £2.50 for 250 grams. Sainsbury's. Subject to availability, excludes locals, number of products varies by store.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Any tips for the big game?
It's a tough one to call. Your best bet is to ask Michael Owen. Here, Michael.
Hello, Gaffer.
You got any tips for the football?
Oh, I think there'll be plenty of goals.
No, I can't see that. Both defences are strong. Yeah, but the little fella up top's lightning. Sorry, lads, I've got to go. I've got money on the next race.
Whether you listen to Harry or Michael, make your best bet at BetVictor. Search online for latest offers. 18 plus, be gamble aware. Please gamble responsibly.
At Kia, we believe movement inspires ideas. Take the all-new Kia Sportage. Our sporty SUV with a striking new exterior and advanced interior creates the space to get inspired. Available to order now with hybrid electric technology. And you get £500 towards your PCP deposit and 3.9% APR representative when you order by the 31st of March. Search Kia Sportage. Kia. Movement that inspires. 3.9% APR representative. Kia Finance.
Whether you're searching for record players or pianos, how you pay matters. Visa helps protect you from payment fraud online. Visa, a network working for everyone.
There's nothing quite like that doorbell moment when your McDelivery arrives. Or snaffling fries on the way back to the living room. There's nothing quite like the taste of a Big Mac in your own home. And there's nothing quite like the kids enjoying a Happy Meal in perfect peace. For a minute, anyway. There's nothing quite like a McDelivery. Order now on the My McDonald's app or via Uber Eats and Just Eat. Participating restaurants only. Serving times and delivery fees apply. Service charge may apply. See the My McDonald's app, Uber Eats or Just Eat for full details.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
With Motorway, sell your car quickly, easily and conveniently from home for free.
5:23, you're listening to LBC. Let me just bring you this piece of breaking news. A source close to President Macron says, and President Macron has spoken to Putin, that's why this is important. Source close to Macron says that President Putin's main goal is to take and control all of Ukraine. Deborah Haynes is security and defense editor at Sky News, has been reporting from Kyiv since the beginning of the invasion, is now in Lviv. Deborah, thank you very much for joining us. Do you feel like, can you see and hear the wall following you from Kiev west to Lviv?
Well, that's a really nice question, very interesting question, because yes, in the city, in the capital, it is becoming increasingly tense. You can feel the war, the actual fighting war, moving closer. The booms getting closer. Targets in the city being hit, and very tense on the streets. So there was, for example, a complete curfew, a complete lockdown. Everyone had to stay at home over the weekend while Ukrainian forces were trying to hunt out and find Russian saboteurs they thought were in the city undercover. And then since then, checkpoints all around the city and inside with security forces stopping cars and checking IDs, and lots of people fleeing or staying at home and then sheltering in basements. But then when you move out of the city and head towards the west, which is where a million people, which is one of the fastest movements that we've seen in terms of refugees fleeing a crisis over the last week have moved. The tension eases slightly. You don't feel that sense of imminent danger. It's just then a sense of increased suffering. You see cars packed full of people and belongings, people just looking frantically on their phones, worried faces, petrol stations, for example. I've been reporting in Ukraine during this crisis since the beginning of December, and the petrol stations across the country are usually really well stocked, and they're very efficient. But now you can just see there's huge queues for petrol on the stations that are still open. There's hardly any food on the shelves anymore. There's this real sense of crisis that follows you right to the border.
Can I ask you about the morale of the people that you're speaking to, whether they're fighting or whether they're running? We've seen these videos of soldiers dancing with NLAW weapons and RPGs and all this sort of slightly odd, very surreal feel to some of them. Is that morale that was at the start still there, or is it changing?
There's absolute categorical defiance amongst amongst everyone you speak to. There's fear, so there will be people that will admit to being scared in terms of soldiers, and then civilians that have also agreed to take up arms. Remember, the government literally was handing out weapons to anyone that wanted them. including foreigners if they wanted to come and fight. But yes, there's fear, but there's this huge sense of existential threat to their way of life, that they have nothing else. They have to fight. It's their country, it's their land. They do not want this invading force. And it sounds really like kind of cheesy, but it's really humbling. It's you kind of become emotional just listening to it, and you wonder whether, you'd hope that anyone would react like that if your country is under threat in this way. And then families are being torn apart, so there's this huge anxiety. Any parent, the idea of having your child in a war zone is horrific. And so, for example, I was speaking to this mum a couple of days ago who's chosen to stay in Kiev, and she's there with her 3 children, quite little. The youngest is only 2, and she said that her 10-year-old daughter, who's her oldest, she kind of became a grown-up overnight. She said when the war happened, and she's got a 5-year-old as well, and the 10-year-old's kind of helping the 5-year-old, and they're going down to the shelter when the sirens come. And it's just to live like that is horrific. And then there's all the many that have chosen to leave their lives and come across the border into Poland, into the other EU countries that border Ukraine, with nothing other than small belongings in their bag.
And for who knows how long. Deborah, great to speak to you. Thank you so much. Deborah Haynes, Security and Defence Editor of Sky News, live for us in Lviv. Anna Corbett joins us, Ukrainian journalist and analyst who's worked in the country between 2010 and 2018. Thank you very much indeed for being there for us, Anna. I wonder what you make of the suggestion from a source of President Macron's that Putin's main goal is to take and control all of Ukraine. Do you see that as being feasible?
We knew that anyway, didn't we?
Well, I would say that this was clear from much earlier than now.
Yeah.
Basically, it was clear from even 2013, 2014, when the Russian invasion actually started with Crimea and the East, and the way Russia has been waging negotiations launched in Minsk to settle the initial phase of the conflict. And the way it was trying to, rather than to settle the conflict and find a solution, it was trying to create leverage over the entire Ukraine, its political life, its social life, and its economic life, and its political decisions, by creating these enclaves within Ukraine and trying to integrate them into Ukrainian political life. Whether it's feasible or not, it depends on how far Russia is or Vladimir Putin are willing to go. For now, Ukrainians are resisting really strongly. They're keeping a lot of positions at a very high cost, and it's hard to believe that Russia, at the current stage, will be able to take over the entire Ukraine, just because Ukraine is a huge country. It wasn't noticed. It wasn't that noticeable in the rest of Europe before, but Ukraine is a huge country with almost 40 million people living there, so it's hard to control it.
There's then going to be, if that genuinely is Putin's aim, and he may well be saying that for a variety of reasons, there's going to be a race against time then between his advancing Russian forces, the sanctions that are being applied to the Russian economy to make sure that Putin doesn't have the funds to finance this operation, and Ukrainian lives.
Exactly. So for now, what Ukrainians need is as much assistance with weapons to defend themselves as possible, and that includes weapons that can prevent Russia from bombarding the cities and civilian objects, which is the key threat right now. Ukraine also needs a lot of assistance in terms of the funding so that its own economy survives and is not tumbling down. And then there are different other ways in which the West can help Ukraine. And for instance, one is described in a document that's been circulated over social media or media. It's called the Kyiv Declaration, and it includes, for instance, the establishment of safe zones or humanitarian or green corridors to the cities and the towns that have been suffering the most, where people are in dire humanitarian need of food, necessities, supplies, medicines.
I guess those would have to be patrolled, which then puts the question back on NATO about what they'd be willing to do. Anna, great to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Anna Corbett, you're a Ukrainian journalist and analyst, worked in the country between 2010 and 2018. We'll get the latest on developments here about the broadcasting of RT, the Russian propaganda channel. The Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, saying that she backs Ofcom in checking whether or not the broadcaster should still be on air. We'll get the details in a few moments. Tom Swarbrick here. It's 5:32. News headlines now. Amelia Cox.
President Putin says what he calls his special military operation in Ukraine has been a success. Earlier, the Ukrainian president called for his Russian counterpart to meet him for talks. Negotiations between delegates from Kiev and Moscow have resumed in Belarus. Heavy shelling is continuing in several cities, including Mariupol and Chernihiv. A 40-mile-long convoy heading to the capital, Kiev, is still said to be some distance away. Analysts believe it has been held up by breakdowns and Ukrainian resistance. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England tonight, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England, a low of 1.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
Ina Sovson is a Ukrainian MP. What is the situation as you understand it in your city?
I've read the story yesterday of twins born in a bunker in Kharkiv, and they were born the night before. And yesterday, both of their parents were killed in another bombardment. They became orphans first day of their life. That is what Putin is doing to my native city of Kharkiv. He's basically just destroying the city. He's turning it to Aleppo in the middle of Europe in the 21st century.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
This is the new way to sell your car from home. This is the motorway. Motorway's trusted dealers compete to give you the best price, meaning you could get more than you expected for your old car. And once you've found the perfect price, you can sit back and relax. We'll pick your car up from home for free. It really is that simple. Get your quote and get started at motorway.co.uk. This is the way. This is the motorway.
Have you lost £3,000 or more in a scam or fraud? If you've been unable to recover your money, then contact us for a no-obligation chat, and we could help you get your money back. CELsolicitors.co.uk specialise in confidential, no-win, no-fee, fraud and scam claims. Please don't suffer alone. Tell CEL. We listen, we care, we win.
Not my nearest location at all.
Whether you're searching for record players or pianos, how you pay matters. Visa helps protect you from payment fraud online. Visa, a network working for everyone.
Leaving a gift in your will to Cancer Research UK is a pledge. Pledges like these fund a third of our research and help secure this life-saving work for future generations. Use Cancer Research UK's free will service where our expert legal partners can guide you through writing or updating your will. Call 0300 123 7733 or visit cruk.org/freewillservice, and together we will beat cancer. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
Dogs are still cute at night, and shareable moments still happen at night. Get the epic new Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra on Vodafone with its revolutionary cameras, so you can take clear, bright night shots. Save £432 guaranteed when you trade in a Samsung Galaxy S20 using our trade-in tool. Vodafone.
£18 per month trade-in saving on 24-month airtime plan. Device plan required. CPI plus 3.9% annual increase. Eligibility checks and terms apply at vodafone.co.uk/terms. Credit by Vodafone.
It's Lidl's Super Weekend with savings up to 50% off from Friday to Sunday. Like muesli bars, where $1.19 now only 79p. And Belgian seashell chocolates, less than half price at just $1.19. In Lidl stores from Friday. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores, excludes NI.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
With Motorway, offering free home collection when selling your car.
5:36, some news just coming in about the Defence Secretary, former Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson, sacked from government after being accused of leaking classified sensitive information, who as Education Secretary lost his job after the exams debacle during the COVID crisis. The good news is that Boris Johnson has just awarded Gavin Williamson a knighthood.
When I arrive.
Sir Gavin Williamson. More details to come. We'll bring you the latest on Russia today. The propaganda channel of the Kremlin is being looked at by Ofcom. First, a business update. Chris Justin joins us.
That better not be you charging me already. I've not bloody had
these
it
energy bills are only going up and up, as we talked about last night. Tell us what the latest forecast is, if you would.
Yeah, and this is focused specifically on one of the drivers of that, which is oil prices in particular. So gas, we have spoken about. Gas prices were elevated again today. There was just continued volatility across both equity and commodity markets as investors across the globe continue to react to all the headlines with regards to Russia and Ukraine. I guess the big talking point earlier on was another spike in that oil price. So a barrel of Brent crude hit $119 a barrel at one point. That's a 9-year high. But perhaps just to underline just how much things do fluctuate and how fluid the current situation is, prices actually retreated this afternoon all the way back to where they started the day, around $113. So clearly still very elevated compared to the beginning of the year, so up 46%, but unwound a lot of that initial gain we saw in the morning. But sadly, equity markets weren't able to show a similar swing after sliding very much into the red this morning. European bourses down across the board. FTSE 100, as an example, down 2.6%. But it's individual companies, once again, that are showing, I guess, the best reflection of the market's general view of their prospects in this current situation. So Polymetal, the Anglo-Russian precious metals miner, is down a huge 42% today. So investors are just fleeing that company over all the sanctions. And the company specifically deals with a lot of Russian banks who then sell their goods on the international gold markets. And clearly, as Russian banks have been targeted heavily, if they're losing one of their biggest customers, that's weighing on their prospects. The business actually lost so much value, it'll now fall out of FTSE 100 as a result. So there's an awful lot of movement going along on a day-to-day basis at the moment, Tom. Some of the companies rising, like commodity companies like Glencore, as we talked about yesterday, and others seeing their prospects just fade overnight.
You're talking about companies moving and changing and at speed. One has exited Russia, and that's the Swedish furniture store IKEA.
That's right, and people might be surprised how much of a presence they've got. They've got 17 stores in total, but they've completely decided to shut down all of those stores. Not leaving a token presence. They're also pausing obtaining materials, their products in Russia, Belarus as well. We talked yesterday about the private sector with genuine skin in the game here, taking a stance following Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, and this absolutely falls into that category, as Russia is IKEA's 10th biggest market in sales. It accounts for about £1.5 billion worth of sales a year, which is about 4% of its global trade. But they're not alone. H&M and ASOS pressed pause on sales to Russia yesterday too. We talked about the automotive sector, I think, on Monday, doing the same. And film studios yesterday as well, taking films that were slated for release off the radar.
And do we have any sense, just in a sentence, Chris, do we have any sense of just how damaged, broken the Russian economy is?
Well, not really. It's so difficult to tell, isn't it? I mean, one of the anecdotes, I guess, that you could mention is from a sanction point of view. There were sanctions put on South Africa during the period of apartheid for 25 years, and they were able to sort of continue as an economy. I'm not saying that they were thriving and a success, but in terms of the immediate impact over the short term, it's difficult to see exactly what that might do. Culturally, you can say it would have an impact on people, psychologically perhaps, but in terms of economically, I guess that will shake out over the coming weeks and months, and I guess it'll be something that will be a very, very big talking point.
Good to speak to you. Chris Justin, thank you. You're from 7 Investment Management.
LBC Business Update.
With Direct Line Business Insurance, receive the support of a dedicated claims handler should you need it.
20 to 6 the time. The Culture Secretary Nadine Dorry is throwing her weight behind Ofcom, potentially removing the broadcast licence of the Russian propaganda channel RT. This is a little of what she told the Commons.
From the very moment Putin began his invasion, I was also very clear that he must not be allowed to exploit our open and free media to spread poisonous propaganda into British homes. Russia Today, RT's own editor-in-chief, called the network an information weapon of the Russian state. And that is why I wrote to Ofcom last week urging them to examine any potential breaches of the broadcasting code. Ofcom has since opened 27 investigations into RT and are now reviewing whether to revoke RT's licence entirely. I am hoping that they expedite those investigations and that those investigations result in the removal of Russia Today's licence, so that they're never again able or have the platform to broadcast their propaganda into the UK.
Nadine Dorries is the Culture Secretary in the House of Commons. Martin Campbell is a media commentator and former chief advisor to the broadcasting regulator. Ofcom is now media advertiser at Media Objectives. Thank you for coming on the programme, Martin. Does any part of you feel slightly uneasy at Nadine Dorries intervening in this way to really tell Ofcom what she'd like them to do?
Very much, yeah, I do feel uneasy about it. She's doing exactly the same as Theresa May did when she stood up in the Commons and effectively told Ofcom to close down RT. Well, you know, the problem is there are broadcasting laws and so on that can shut down propaganda stations, and they're in force, and Ofcom can do that. Once a government steps in, it puts Ofcom in a very tricky position, really, because it looks as if they're going to be forced to do the government bidding. There's a damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they take RT's licence away, I'm sure people will say, well, it was because of political pressure, or they should have done it earlier when it was in the Commons and so on. But the thing is, it's almost like the Dangerous Dogs Act. You know, if you start getting politicians involved in closing down TV stations, what happens when you have a different government? What happens when you have different TV stations?
But why is Ofcom apparently so squeamish about removing RT's licence?
Well, that's an interesting point, Tom. I think that the problem is this, and that is that they did in 2018. They issued a statement about the dangers of closing down state TV because of freedom of expression, and I think that was a good thing to do. What they've got is they've really got two ways to look at this. One is concerned with due balance and due impartiality, and the other is concerned with whether they're fit and proper people to hold a license. Now, that may be the route that they'll go down, because if they look at due balance, it's not balance, it's due balance, and it's what you would expect from a state radio station. Well, as far as impartiality is concerned, that's the nature of state TV. And as far as due balance is concerned, if you've seen RT, what they would do is the Western stations, such as yourself and BBC, will say, right, Russia has invaded the Ukraine, but Putin says it's a special project. What RT will say is, Putin has launched a special project, the West are calling it an invasion. So there is a sort of strange balance in there. It's not totally one-sided.
Well, is that to say that for stations like this that say Russia has invaded Ukraine, Vladimir Putin says it's a special operation, that is as true as Russia Today saying Vladimir Putin has declared a special operation? Or is the narrative, or are the facts being used to suit the narrative, which is clearly what they're doing?
Oh, of course. But again, as I say, that is the nature of state TV. So if you use that as an argument, you will not have any state TV anywhere, because by and large they put forward the views of the country. I'm not an apologist for RT, but
Ofcom have been for too long. You know, it's not a secret that RT has been doing this. I'm not sure that it's going to be the case that only just now turns out that they weren't fit and proper people to hold a licence in the first place.
Well,
Ofcom's been lax on this.
Yeah, that's the difficulty I always had, and I had this difficulty when I was with Ofcom, so it's been licensed for a long, long time, is that it's well known that although the license is held by an independent company, that the Kremlin is in fact financing it, and it shouldn't be held by a political body. And therefore, the big query to me has always been whether whether that finance should have been looked at a little bit more closely in the first place. Once you've licensed it, you've got a bit of a problem on your hands. But of course, there's also as well the BBC card, which will be played in this. I hear that Deutsche Welle has been kicked out of Russia because they banned RT. I would imagine if Ofcom takes away RT's license, it still has a license, broadcasting to the ether and broadcast on the internet. If they do that, they will kick out BBC and UK reporters from Russia, and our broadcasting will be the poorer for that. So, you know, these things are never straightforward.
Understood. Martin, thank you. Martin Campbell, media commentator, former chief advisor to the broadcasting regulator Ofcom, is now media advisor at Media Objectives. Of course, as Martin suggests, these things are always more complicated than they seem. Or you could just tell Russia to do this.
Frankly, Russia should go away. It should shut up.
Yeah.
The now newly knighted former Defence and Education Secretary, Sir Gavin Williamson. 5:46, news headlines on LBC. Amelia Cox.
President Putin has described his military operation in Ukraine as a success. Kiev is asking for an immediate ceasefire during negotiations with Moscow, which have resumed in Belarus. Officials from the Ukrainian city of Mariupol say they are being destroyed following a sustained attack lasting almost 2 days. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England tonight, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England, a low of 1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. Because of the strike, 7 underground lines are completely suspended. There is a reduced service running on parts of the Central District Northern Piccadilly lines, but no services are running through central London. There's also no Docklands Light Railway between Shadwell and Bank, and Great Northern aren't running trains between Moorgate and Finsbury Park. On the roads, there are long delays on the A4 going out of London. It's taking about 45 minutes to go from Knightsbridge to the Hogarth roundabout in Chiswick. There are severe delays in Derbyshire on the M1 northbound. 2 lanes are closed because of an accident between junction 25 for Nottingham and junction 26 for Eastwood. And on Merseyside, there are queues on the M57 northbound because of an accident at junction 7, Switch Island.
This is LBC.
Unlike most networks, Tesco mobile prices stay fixed throughout your contract. You could say they're as frozen as our peas. Get the amazing Samsung Galaxy S21 FE 5G with 6 gigs of data for just £24.99 a month with club card prices, saving you £180. This is Supermarket Mobile. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 30th of March was £29.99, saving £5 monthly. Club card, 36-month credit and rolling monthly use agreements required. 5G subject to coverage. Terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
This is LBC.
At Sainsbury's, we've dropped the prices of hundreds of products. Like buy Sainsbury's British King Edward potatoes were £1.75, now £1.50 for 2 kilograms. And taste the difference, Wiltshire unsmoked bacon was £2.75, now £2.40 for 240 grams. Sainsbury's. Subject to availability, excludes locals, number of products varies by store.
Save on that big bathroom refit with this TradePoint member exclusive offer. With 10% off all bathrooms when you spend £250 on a bathroom. Plus, if you loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. Find us at B&Q or at tradepoint.co.uk. Excludes installation services as 24th of March. Subject to availability to tradepoint.co.uk.
500,000 businesses connect using Zoom. A single platform for video, phone, chat and conference rooms. Zoom enables real-time collaboration, no matter where your teams are. Global enterprises trust the easy-to-use, reliable and secure Zoom platform to power high-performance teams. Empower your workforce with Zoom. Save 15% on meetings, chat and phone with a Zoom United bundle. Visit zoom.com/bundle. Zoom. How the world connects.
We all have a fire inside us. It gives us energy and spirit to do the things we love. Every morning we get to feed that fire and set ourselves up for the day with a warming and satisfying bowl of Quaker oats. Because when we feed it right, when it's fully ablaze, we can take on anything the day might bring.
Don't tell me this is often done.
Feed more than just your body. Feed the fire inside. Quaker Oats.
The Admiral and Mrs. Taylor set out on a lovely picnic in a hot air balloon. But things didn't go to plan.
Pesky seagulls, they ruined everything.
I know.
They not only wrecked my son's car with my roast chicken, but they also demolished Mum's chimney and her garden.
But you saved the day with Admiral Multicover.
Mrs. Taylor insured her family cars and homes, all at different addresses.
Yes, thanks to you.
Yeah, there's Keno for you.
Rewardingly simple.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Happily ever after. The end.
Night, Dad.
ISBN number 0130-998634. Cover photograph.
Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy our delicious 99p cheeseburger, part of the McDonald's Saver menu. From 11 a.m, price and participation may vary.
Time to get out of here.
Whether you're Searching for record players or pianos? How you pay matters.
Gotta find somewhere.
Visa helps protect you from payment fraud online. Visa, a network working for everyone.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
With Motorway, where dealers compete to give you the best price for your car.
To mark your card after the news at 6 o'clock, I'd really like to hear from you if you are a resident of or have family still in or you came from any of Latvia, Moldova, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Poland, countries that are bordering Russia and or Ukraine, about how you feel your countries need to change, what has to happen in order to further protect those countries if we believe that Putin wouldn't stop with Ukraine. If you're from Latvia, Moldova, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Poland, are you looking over your shoulder at what is coming in Ukraine and worrying about your own country? Come on to that after 6. You can't have helped but notice, slightly closer to home, that for a second day this week, tube workers have staged a walkout in London, meaning that millions of you are struggling to get around the city. Reporting live from Hammersmith Station, our reporter Charlotte Lynch. Charlotte?
Tom, some of the buses here are so full they're just driving straight past without letting the queues of people on, as if they weren't frustrated enough. Now, this is a busy station. There's usually 4 tube lines running. The best you'll get from here today is 1 district line train every half an hour. Other than that, it's the bus. Everyone instead is being forced to do that if they've even braved the journey. I have to say, I think the message about working from home got through, particularly after Tuesday's absolute misery. The scenes on Tuesday were just horrific. I've spoken to far fewer commuters than I thought I'd find, possibly because they did opt for the advice of working from home. But these people I spoke to still got caught out.
Very ever coming to London, so it really threw me this morning. I've been playing around with buses all day. At the moment, I was about 45 minutes late. So I'm now going to try and make my way back. And they're all pretty packed as well, aren't they? Like, every time you stop, I mean, some of them, they just weren't opening the doors.
I was due to late to my appointment for doing my passport. Yeah, so now I'm trying to grab an Uber or, to get back home.
I'm not actually normally from London, so I come up like the day and
wasn't for the TfL overground, that would have been absolute nightmare. But that, we managed to make it work without too much disruption. But obviously it's extra busy because there is no underground. We showed this morning about 10:30, the overground was like for rush hour. So I presume it's been like that for most of the day, so all the transport service is still running.
Well, of course, the London Mayor Sadiq Khan has been blamed for this by Tory MPs and councillors in London. Lots of people angry with him too. The Mayor, though, insists that members of the RMT union have refused to negotiate. Thousands of them walking out for a second day this week in a row over government funding.
Will there be napkins?
The roads around
50-50 chance? Yes, there is.
The whole capital, because of course more cars are being forced onto the road. There's more buses on. If you want to try and get a taxi, they are heavily booked out. If you do manage to get one, they're so expensive, so it's brought up lots of concerns as well about safety. And if you're thinking of going back to the office tomorrow morning, it's still going to be a bit of a hangover, I'm afraid. This disruption is expected to last until mid-morning because none of the trains are where they're supposed to be. They go back to certain depots at the end of the day, at the end of the shift. They're not where they're supposed to be because they haven't been running. We saw that yesterday as well after Tuesday's disruption of fallout yesterday. So tomorrow, commuters are facing a 4th straight morning of misery.
Charlotte, thank you very much indeed. LBC reporter Charlotte Lynch outside Hammersmith Station for us. 5 to 6 is the time. A year ago today, 33-year-old Sarah Everard was walking past Clapham Common after leaving a friend's house. Just a mile from her home, a car pulled over, a man got out, showed her his police badge and told her to get into his car. Wayne Cousins, a serving police officer, abducted, raped and murdered Sarah. Her burned body was found in Kent. Tonight, events to commemorate Sarah's life are taking place in southwest London. Her parents released a statement earlier saying, "Our lives have changed forever, and we live with the sadness of our loss." Nusrit Metad, the former superintendent in the Metropolitan Police, and Harriet Wistrich is founder director for the Centre of Women's Justice. Harriet, a year on from that absolutely horrific crime, what has changed when it comes to the approach either within the police or wider society towards women's safety?
Well, any change that has come at the top has not yet filtered through onto the ground. And I think that there needs to be more urgent action. Certainly, from our point of view, we work with frontline organisations supporting women who are victims of abuse. We're still seeing lots of criminal justice failings in relation to the investigation and prosecution of crimes of violence against women. And we also await a proper plan to tackle police perpetrated abuse, which is not sadly confined to one case. We've been approached by over 165 women in relation to a police super complaint we've submitted in relation to police perpetrated domestic abuse, for example.
Let me put that to Nusret Mehtab, former superintendent in the Met. Do you think, Nusret, that really not a lot, if anything, has changed at all within the Metropolitan Police around this?
I think I would say that it's not just a policing problem, it is a societal problem. And, you know, we've got violence against women and girls at the heart of debate, which is a positive. However, there needs, and I would agree with Harriet, that there needs to be so much more done in policing as well, and that takes time to actually put through a plan, a solid, concrete plan that then needs to filter through into the rest of society and filter into the rank and file. For me, firstly, what I'd like to see is that actually 12 months on, there hasn't been much change. Misogyny is still not a crime, and it was rejected on the 28th of February by the House of Commons. Sexual harassment is not a crime, and the
sexual harassment is not a crime.
No, sexual harassment isn't. Harassment on its own is, and that takes many, but what I want to see is sexual harassment that women are subjected to on the street or anywhere else, that's actually made a crime. Sexual harassment isn't, but that harassment on its own is an offence. So I would like to see that, and I think 95% of women would like to see sexual harassment.
What would that involve, Nusret? As you say, if harassment itself is a crime, and of course sexual assault is a crime, what would be the difference between sexual assault, harassment, and or sexual harassment?
Well, sexual harassment is what women, if you look at the polls, if you look at what women are saying, they face every day when on the streets, and it can range from something as a wolf whistle or somebody approaching you on the street and many other forms, and that should be made quite clear that sexual harassment anywhere is an offence.
Harriet, what did you make of the rejection of misogyny as a hate crime?
Well, I mean, there is a sort of discriminatory element to that, because all other protected characteristics, are hate crimes apart from on account of sex. So on the one hand, that is, kind of just starkly seems like discrimination. On the other hand, my own view is that really what we ought to be concentrating our efforts into is implementing existing laws rather than creating new laws around speech. So I don't think that really is the priority. I think the absolute priority is to start increasing the investigation into actual crimes of violence against women and girls, and increasing the prosecution of that, and rooting out the police perpetrated abuse from within police, making it absolute zero culture. Because at the moment, there are still far too many serving officers who've been accused of crimes that women are very fearful of reporting police perpetrators, and rightly so, because those cases are not investigated independently and often result in victimisation.
Very good to talk to you, Harriet. Thank you. Harriet Wistrich, you're founder and director for the Centre of Women's Justice, and to you, Nusret Mehtab, you're a former superintendent in the Metropolitan Police. You're listening to Tom Swarbrick in for Eddie Mayer on LBC. It's 6 o'clock.
I will never go back on the statement that Russians and Ukrainians are one people.
Vladimir Putin has been speaking this afternoon despite Russian forces suffering heavy losses. He insists his special operations in Ukraine are going to plan.
Emmanuel Macron saying that Vladimir Putin is lying to himself. Also, he's making a major mistake with his move to invade Ukraine.
Another call between the French and Russian leaders. Emmanuel Macron says Putin wants to occupy the whole of Ukraine. In the next hour, are you in Eastern Europe or another country that has been, in part, threatened by Russia? Have you got family in Poland, in Moldova, in Finland? Tell us about what the invasion of Ukraine means for you and what you fear for your country.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, President Putin has told the Russian people his invasion of Ukraine is going to plan. During a speech in which he referred to the war as his special military operation, he praised his soldiers and called them real heroes. Speaking from Moscow, he says he wants to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine.
I will never go back on the statement that Russians and Ukrainians are one people, even though that a lot of Ukrainians have been threatened and brainwashed, and of course some of them consciously started following Bandera movement and other factions that were on the side of Hitler during the Second World War.
Earlier, Ukraine's President Zelensky called for Putin to meet him for talks, saying it's the only way to stop this war. Bombardments are continuing in several key cities across Ukraine. Ukrainian MP Vadim Ivchenko says Russian troops will continue to face fierce resistance.
We will fight for the Ukrainian independence, and Putin unite all the territory of Ukraine, pro-Russian territory, pro-Ukrainian. It's different nations now fighting for the independence of our country. Even it's just some kilometers from Russia, from the Russian border.
It's feared hundreds could be dead in the port of Mariupol, which has been under a sustained attack for almost 2 days. Russian soldiers are said to have blocked food supplies and cut off water, heat and electricity. 22 people have been killed following airstrikes on 2 schools and houses in the northern city of Chernihiv. Russia is now being investigated for war crimes as a result of the invasion. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab hopes it will discourage some of Putin's forces.
The deterrent message must go out and will be received, not just by Putin and those in Moscow, but by those young conscripts and those commanders on the ground in Ukraine, that if they face illegal orders from the Kremlin to commit war crimes, they will end up, there's a very good chance they'll end up, in the dock of a court and then in a prison.
In sport, the International Paralympic Committee has reversed its decision to allow athletes from Russia and Belarus to compete in Beijing. The Premier League says it's reviewing its Russian television deal. Also this evening, former Defence and Education Secretary Gavin Williamson has been knighted. Downing Street says the Queen has conferred the honour on the Tory MP who has twice been sacked from the government. He left the cabinet in a reshuffle last year after presiding over the government's exams policy during the pandemic. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 190 points at 72.38. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.20. LBC weather: rain spreading east across Scotland and northern England tonight, turning drier for western areas over Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England, a low of 1. Rain lingering over Scotland and northern England tomorrow, drier with sunny spells in the west, isolated showers across Wales and the southwest, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation with Tom Swarbrick.
Very good evening to you. 6:05 is the time. Tom Swarbrick in for Eddie Mayer here on LBC. Hope you find you well. One of the effects of what is looking likely now to be a prolonged battle in Ukraine, the years potentially of insurgency, is a complete reordering of Europe's security. Europe is having to change, and quickly, as a result of Russia's invasion. Almost overnight, Germany changed its defence policy, committing more money to its spending, and is seeking to wean itself, as many other European countries are, off of Russian energy. That will take a much longer period of time. To be honest, I think it is an absolute scandal that a country like Germany would outsource something so important as its energy supply to a despot and tyrant like Putin. How on earth was that ever allowed to happen? And then you remember that a former German chancellor sits on the board of Gazprom. There are plenty of Eastern European countries that are nervously looking over their shoulders now at what is to come next and what might be to come for them. We'll come on to that in just a moment. First, Tom Tugendhat joins us, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Conservative MP for Tunbridge and Morling. Thank you very much for joining the programme, Mr. Tugendhat. Your view on what you think is changing in Europe and what effect that change might have?
Well, there are several things that are changing that we've seen in the last week. Changes that we thought may have taken months, years even, have happened in days. And the most obvious one is the change that